Chapter 342. The four imperial concubines came to pay their respects to Chu Xiang. Imperial concubine Shi, who had always been arrogant and despotic, put away all of her arrogance in one night. Instead, she became gloomy. Even her personal palace maid did not dare to get too close to her. She lowered her head and trembled as she followed. However, the other three concubines were not afraid of her. Her father had been removed from his official position. Even if she was a tiger, she was a tiger whose teeth had been pulled out. What was there to be afraid of? Imperial concubine Li was not that smart. After sitting down, she was the first to lose her cool. Using a handkerchief to cover her mouth, she laughed and said, "What is it with imperial concubine Shi today?" Like a sawed-off gourd, he did not utter a single word. Isn't imperial concubine Shi the most capable? Imperial concubine Shi's sharp gaze shot towards her, but the mocking expression on her face became even stronger. She giggled and said, "I almost forgot. Imperial concubine Shi's family has a few bastards that caused Minister Qi to lose his official position. Imperial concubine Shi naturally wouldn't be happy. Oh, that's not right. Look at my mouth. I can't call you Minister Qi anymore. I can barely call you Lord Qi." Imperial concubine Li slapped her own mouth in an exaggerated manner, using very little force. It was as though she feared that people would not know that she was deliberately teasing Imperial concubine Shi. Imperial concubine Shi abruptly stood up and snapped. "Even if my father doesn't have an official position, he's not someone you can mock. Who do you think you are? If it weren't for the fact that you have a face that's comparable to a courtesan's, you wouldn't even be able to touch the door of the palace. You've got guts. Even now you still dare to humiliate me. Do you really think that you are still the most favored sister in the minister's mansion?" Imperial concubine Li's face was bright red with anger, as she turned to look at Chu Xiang with an aggrieved expression. "Your Highness the Imperial Noble Concubine, you must support this concubine." Imperial concubine Shi's words are too excessive. This concubine is His Majesty's Imperial concubine, yet she actually dares to compare this concubine to that filthy girl. She is insulting His Majesty. Chu Xiang deeply agreed. The Emperor's concubines were like courtesans. If this wasn't an insult to the Emperor, then what was? She reclined on the soft couch and ate the grapes that Ziyu fed her. She faintly said, "It seems that the Qi family really doesn't have any rules. From top to bottom, no one understands etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame." Imperial concubine Shi has been in the palace for so long and has even deliberately learned the rules from Mama Qin, but she still can't learn how to speak. Concubine Shi abruptly turned around to glare at her. She was so angry that her entire body was trembling. "Chu Xiang, how dare you humiliate me in public? His Majesty dotes on you for a few days. Do you really think you can dominate the harem?" Chu Xiang was puzzled. "Can't I? Ben Gong still needs to thank Shi Fei. If it weren't for your Qi family's foul atmosphere, the position of Minister of Revenue wouldn't have been vacant, and my father wouldn't have gotten such a good job. Since that's the case, this consort will not punish you for your crime of offending your superiors. You may withdraw." Imperial concubine, she stood there with her back straight. Her imposing manner frightened many palace servants into silence. However, she didn't have the slightest advantage over Chu Xiang, who was casually lying down. She even felt that Chu Xiang didn't put her in her eyes at all, which made her feel even more humiliated. In the past, it was always her who taunted Chu Xiang, and Chu Xiang did not say a word. Since when did their roles become reversed? It seemed that after the Emperor had been attacked by an assassin, Chu Xiang had saved the Emperor and obtained the Emperor's favor. She knew that she should keep a low profile and wait for an opportunity to contact the Prince Regent before making any plans. But Chu Xiang had called for the spies that she had planted this morning to be transferred to the Cold Palace. She no longer had anyone that she could use. This was clearly Chu Xiang seeing that her father had lost his power, and she was allowing Imperial concubine Li to humiliate her. Who didn't know that Imperial concubine Li spent all day dancing and singing for Chu Xiang, and she had obtained quite a few rewards from Chu Xiang. Imperial concubine Li had already stood on Chu Xiang's side. Wasn't Imperial concubine Li's intentions the same as Chu Xiang's intentions? Imperial concubine, she hated that she could not return to when she had just entered the palace and trample the two of them to death. If she knew earlier that Chu Xiang had hidden herself so deeply, she would not have placed so much effort on Imperial concubine Jean and Imperial concubine Hui, which allowed Chu Xiang to unknowingly obtain favor. Imperial concubine, she was not stupid. If the Prince Regent had protected the Qi family, her father would not have shut himself away to reflect on his mistakes. It was very likely that the Prince Regent had already given up on them out of anger. She had no one to rely on, and she feared that Chu Xiang would not let her off. The Chu and Qi families had already become enemies, and there was no way for the two to be reconciled. As for Chu Xiang, she was also the emperor's favorite imperial concubine. The one that would fail could only be her. She had thought through all of this and was ready to throw caution to the wind. She looked at Chu Xiang's relaxed appearance and thought of how Chu Xiang had her copy sutras, had her learn the rules, and had shamed the entire Qi family for not knowing any sense of propriety. Her heart was filled with anger, but she forcefully suppressed it. Right now, she only had one path, and that was to have the emperor die. As long as she caused the emperor's death, the Prince Regent would definitely reward the Qi family after ascending to the throne. He would also give her a way out. She would still be rich and would definitely be much better off than she was now. Imperial concubine, she gritted her teeth and left without saying a single word, which caused the other three imperial concubines to feel very shocked. Imperial concubine Li walked over to Chu Xiang's side and said in disbelief, "Your Highness, the imperial noble concubine, you're letting her go just like this? She was disrespectful to you. So she should be punished to kneel outside for 2 hours to serve as a warning to others and establish your might." Chu Xiang smiled. "What need is there for this one to establish my might? There's no need to chase after a stray dog." Imperial concubine Hui and Imperial concubine Jean looked at each other, and suddenly felt a bit of sorrow. Minister Qi had been brought down by the Chu family. Today it was Imperial concubine Xi's father. Would it be their father tomorrow? Chu Xiang had cut off all of Imperial concubine Xi's claws today. Was it a casual act, or was it for them to see? Could it be that she wanted them to take a side before expanding the imperial harem? They glanced at Imperial concubine Li and subconsciously began to think a bit more. Chu Xiang wanted to become the empress, right? The two had yet to figure out what to do. After chatting with Chu Xiang for a bit, they bid farewell and left. It was Imperial concubine Li that had recently tasted some benefits from Chu Xiang. Thus she was very happy to stay and relieve Chu Xiang's boredom. Xiao Yuanzhao was concerned about Chu Xiang leaving the palace. Thus he headed over to Taihe Palace after court was dismissed. Upon entering Taihe Palace, he heard the very beautiful sound of a zither and a mellow voice. That voice caused people to feel very comfortable. However, it could not compare to the sound of the zither at all. It was truly capable of causing people to become immersed in it, and they did not want to wake up. Xiao Yuanzhao stopped to listen for a while, then gestured for everyone to keep quiet. Quietly walking in, he saw Imperial concubine Li standing in the yard and singing. As for the person playing the zither, it was the always lazy Chu Xiang. Xiao Yuanzhao could not help but stare at Chu Xiang in shock. Even Chu Zhe, who had come with him, was very surprised. Chu Xiang's zither skills were actually this good? They had never known. Chu Xiang had suddenly become interested while listening to Imperial concubine Li singing. Thus she personally played a song. The palace servants at the front were all mesmerized. It was only when Xiao Yuanzhao got closer that they saw him and quickly kneeled to salute. Imperial concubine Li also saw Xiao Yuanzhao and saluted with her chest raised. However, Xiao Yuanzhao waved his hand and excused her salute. Walking past her, he stood in front of Chu Xiang. Chu Xiang did not even raise her head, as she continued to leisurely play. She did not pay any attention to Xiao Yuanzhao at all, which caused Chu Zhe to break out in a cold sweat. Chu Xiang finished playing the entire song before raising her head and saying to Xiao Yuanzhao with a smile, "Does it sound good?" Xiao Yuanzhao looked at her with a complicated expression. Exactly how many sides did she not show? The 4 imperial concubines of the palace all had their own strengths. They were proficient in the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, singing, and dancing. Only the imperial noble concubine did not have any talents. She was just beautiful, and she was even more beautiful than imperial concubine Li. But today he found that Chu Xiang's zither skills were so good. Just as he felt that he had more or less understood her, he found a new side to her. Xiao Yuanzhao held her hand with a normal expression and pulled her to his side. Beloved concubine, we actually did not know that you were so good at playing the zither. You have never played for us before. Chu Xiang held his hand and tilted her head. I just recovered from my injuries. How could I have had the energy to do this before? If you like it, I will play it for you in the future, but it can't be just me performing. You will also need to perform for me. Chu Zhe and imperial concubine Li immediately held their breaths, as they became worried about Chu Xiang's boldness. Xiao Yuanzhao, however, heard Chu Xiang's thoughts. Don't do unfair things, otherwise, wouldn't I become a performer? Xiao Yuanzhao laughed and said, All right, we want to see just how many more things beloved concubine is hiding. Sooner or later, we will dig them out one by one. His words had a double meaning, but Chu Xiang only treated it as him teasing her, as she turned to greet Chu Zhe. Chu Zhe's heart returned to its original place, but he still felt a bit of lingering fear. He never thought that his younger sister and the emperor would interact like this in private. It was even more casual than when his parents interacted. The emperor had just reprimanded Minister Qi because of the rules, and he was worried that the emperor would also be dissatisfied with Chu Xiang, who knew that the emperor would not show any signs of being displeased. He suddenly recalled what Chu Xiang had said to his mother. The emperor liked her like this. At this moment, it seemed that it was true. Xiao Yuanzhao did not pay attention to what the people around him were thinking. He was certain that they were loyal, so he did not listen to what they were thinking. He also did not rely on reading minds. The only person that he could not help but listen to was Chu Xiang. It was not good for him and Chu Xiang to be too intimate in front of outsiders, so it was not convenient for him to listen to what she was thinking. He immediately wanted to have imperial concubine Li and the others leave. Chu Xiang tugged at him. Your Majesty still hasn't seen imperial concubine Li dance. How about having imperial concubine Li dance today? She turned to look at imperial concubine Li, who was a bit jealous of her. Quickly go and prepare. If you dance well, it won't just be this one that will reward you. His Majesty will also reward you greatly. Imperial concubine Li's eyes lit up, as she happily complied and went to prepare. Xiao Yuanzhao was not too happy, and he then heard Chu Xiang's thoughts. Try using a beautiful woman that can sing and dance. If the emperor is interested, it would be best to leave the palace a bit earlier. Otherwise, if the emperor was in the mood to favor a palace maid, she would not know. Xiao Yuanzhao maintained a smile on his face. Holding Chu Xiang's hand, he walked over to the pavilion and sat down. However, he was feeling unhappy. She was going to leave again. It was as if the imperial Gui concubine leaving the palace was something that could be done easily. She even wanted to test whether or not he was interested in other women. Did she really think that he was a pervert? If he had this sort of heart, he would have favored each of the 4 imperial concubines long ago. She was still afraid that he would casually favor palace maids. Did he look like he would be that easily aroused? Xiao Yuanzhao did not know why he felt unhappy. Was it because she was going to leave? Or was it because she was looking down on him? Or was it because she was becoming more and more mysterious? But what surprised him was that he did not feel any fear that he should have. This made him very vigilant. If an emperor was this confident in a person, it definitely would not be a good thing. Xiao Yuanzhao chatted idly with Chu Xiang, and Chu Xiang glanced at him. She thought to herself, this emperor wouldn't be absent-minded after hearing that she was going to dance, right? Xiao Yuanzhao's heart trembled, and he quickly focused all of his attention on Chu Xiang. He had thought it through. Before he clearly understood Chu Xiang's situation, he would still come to see her every day to dote on her. Otherwise, she might disappear without a trace if he was careless. For the first time, imperial concubine Li performed a beautiful dance in front of Xiao Yuanzhao. She did her best and performed the best dance of her life. Who knew that when she looked up, she would see Xiao Yuanzhao personally feeding Chu Xiang grapes. His eyes were filled with doting love, and he did not even look at her. Instead, it was Chu Xiang who was very satisfied. This emperor could be doted on. This caused Xiao Yuanzhao, who had heard her thoughts, to nearly lose his composure. She doted on him? What was she thinking? Chapter 343. Xiao Yuanzhao found that the more he understood Chu Xiang, the less he understood Chu Xiang. She was like a thick history book that people couldn't understand completely. The more he read, the more he couldn't help but want to understand more. Another important point was, what were the loopholes in his palace? Why could the Imperial Gui Fei leave whenever she wanted? If the assassins knew about this, wouldn't they be able to enter and leave the palace at any time? Xiao Yuanzhao worked harder than before. He woke up earlier and went to bed later. He even took an hour to practice martial arts every day, just in case. Chu Xiang just wanted to be in love with him. She was surprised to find that he was so busy that he didn't have time to talk about love. She used to think that being the emperor was boring. He had to care about so many messy things. He couldn't even eat the dishes he liked. Now it seemed that it was true. It was so miserable to be the emperor. The new emperor she liked was so miserable. Chu Xiang decided to help him. After all, he was the boyfriend she wanted to spoil. How could she bear to let him suffer alone? Wasn't it just the Prince Regent? If she took him down openly, she would have to go to war and lose a lot of money. However, she could get rid of him secretly. Chu Xiang was too bored after recuperating for so long. She went to the study and suddenly became interested in medicine and pharmacology. She began to read medical books. She even ordered people to take out the herbs in the storeroom and make a pharmacy. She fiddled with the herbs inside every day. Xiao Yuanzhao felt a chill down his spine when he found out. He suddenly thought of the day when he teased Chu Xiang to stay overnight. Chu Xiang said in her heart that if he stayed, she would drug him. Chu Xiang definitely knew pharmacology. If she did this, she might cause some trouble again. He summoned a secret guard and asked with a frown, "Have you investigated the Imperial Gui Fei's life? When did she learn pharmacology?" The secret guard answered honestly, "I was worried about alerting the enemy. I didn't investigate to the deepest part. The Imperial Gui Fei's words and actions in the boudoir, before she entered the palace, are incomplete." Xiao Yuanzhao thought that Chu Xiang was mysterious. Maybe she had some secret forces. If he continued to investigate, he would alert the enemy, so he gave up. He only said, "Keep an eye on the Chu family. If the Chu family and the Imperial Gui Fei do anything strange, report to me immediately." "Yes," the secret guard responded and left. But Xiao Yuanzhao could not calm down. He wanted to know where the loophole was from Chu Xiang, but he couldn't ask directly. He had already sent people to investigate the palace many times, but they had not found any problems. After thinking about it, the fastest way to find out was to listen to Chu Xiang's thoughts from time to time. When Xiao Yuanzhao thought of this, his first reaction was that Chu Xiang would definitely take advantage of him. Then he was secretly annoyed. How could he be assimilated by Chu Xiang? When the two of them were together, it was obvious that Chu Xiang was at a disadvantage. Why would he be afraid of taking advantage of her? Liang Zhong looked at him sitting there alone, frowning one moment, smiling the next, and then getting angry the next. He silently lowered his head and held back his laughter. Xiao Yuanzhao pondered for a while, then asked somewhat angrily, "Liang Zhong, why is your Imperial Gui Fei so annoying?" Liang Zhong had been with him for a long time, so his words were more intimate. Hearing this, he moved closer and said with a smile, "It's not that Imperial Gui Fei is annoying. It's that Emperor cares about Imperial Gui Fei, so you always think about her. This servant congratulates Emperor on his great joy. Emperor has opened his heart and put Imperial Gui Fei in his heart." What? Xiao Yuanzhao looked at Liang Zhong like he was looking at an idiot. He had clearly discovered Chu Xiang's plan to leave the palace, and those messy thoughts in his mind. How was this opening his heart? He frowned and waved his hand, ordering Liang Zhong to withdraw. He was too lazy to explain to him. Everyone else had been deceived by Chu Xiang's appearance and could not understand him. Even his own brother, Chu Zhe, could not understand. This feeling of being the only one sober when everyone was drunk was too depressing. Because Chu Xiang was fiddling with the herbs, Xiao Yuanzhao was afraid that she would drug him. So when he entered Taihe Palace, he immediately held Chu Xiang's hand and did not let go. Every time Xiao Yuanzhao came, he would hold Chu Xiang's hand. Chu Xiang was confused at the beginning, but now she was used to it. She just thought that he wanted to use the excuse of being obsessed with beauty to fool the regent. But today, she held a book in one hand and sorted the herbs with the other. Xiao Yuanzhao actually took the book in her hand and read it with her. Then, he held one of her hands. Wasn't this a bit strange? Did he have skin-craving disease? Chu Xiang discreetly looked at Xiao Yuanzhao. Xiao Yuanzhao felt her suspicion and his heart tightened. But he felt that Chu Xiang was too mysterious. If she secretly drugged him, then wouldn't he fall for it? He would feel uneasy if he didn't hold her hand. Also, what did skin-craving disease mean? He felt that Chu Xiang was scolding him in her heart again. Chu Xiang probed. Your Majesty, I'm fiddling with the herbs. It's very boring. You can go sit over there. Even if Xiao Yuanzhao knew that she was testing him, he didn't want to let go. He had an idea and thought of Liang Zhong's words about him being enlightened. He turned to Chu Xiang and smiled. One day apart is like 3 autumns. How can Jin be willing to be so far away from my beloved concubine? Jin finally finished a busy day, so Zhen must be close to my beloved concubine. Chu Xiang blinked. Didn't she want to be in a relationship with him? He was here now. Without waiting for Xiao Yuanzhao to understand the meaning of falling in love, Chu Xiang threw away the medicinal herbs and called someone to clean her hands. She raised her head and smiled at Xiao Yuanzhao. Then it's not easy for the emperor to come. I won't do these things. Let's go to the imperial garden. Ask someone to get a boat. We'll play in the lake for a while, and come back to eat when it's dark. How about it? Xiao Yuanzhao didn't hear anything else in her heart. He knew that she was acting the same on the outside and hesitantly nodded. Liang Zhong immediately asked someone to arrange it. Chu Xiang and Xiao Yuanzhao walked hand in hand in the imperial palace. When the palace servants saw this, they all lowered their heads in shock. They thought that the emperor really doted on the imperial Gui Fei. They even had to walk hand in hand after leaving Taihe Palace. Xiao Yuanzhao felt uncomfortable all over, but now that he shook off Chu Xiang, he felt that it was very strange. He could only grit his teeth and endure everyone's gazes. When they reached the lakeside, Chu Xiang had the palace servants wait a bit further away. She then got on the boat with Xiao Yuanzhao. Once she got on, she sat next to Xiao Yuanzhao and leaned on his chest. She pointed at the mandarin ducks in the distance. Emperor, you row the boat. We'll go over there to see the mandarin ducks. I heard that you know how to play the flute. Can you play a song for me? Xiao Yuanzhao could feel that Chu Xiang was in a good mood. What she said was the same as what she thought. This made his somewhat tense mood completely relax. A smile also appeared on his lips. He followed Chu Xiang's intentions and rowed the boat over. Then he held her in his arms and played the jade flute. On the lake, the emperor was handsome and the imperial Gui Fei was gentle and beautiful. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. They snuggled together with the mandarin ducks beside them. It was as if they were a pair, the best match in the world. Shi Fei, who had rushed over after hearing the news, saw this scene. Her eyes turned red from jealousy as she stared at the man and woman on the lake. Even if she worked for the regent, she had been in the palace for more than a year. How could she not be moved by such an outstanding emperor? She even secretly thought that she wanted to help the emperor and tell the emperor some of the regent's plans. But the emperor didn't give her any face. He didn't favor her even once and even disliked her approach. These days, she had always heard that the emperor favored the imperial Gui Fei. She didn't believe it in her heart. The emperor didn't even like her, so how could he like Chu Xiang? Especially after Minister Chu overthrew her father, she didn't believe in this so-called favor. Even more, she believed that the emperor favored Chu Xiang because he wanted Minister Chu to be loyal. It wasn't true at all. But what was she seeing now? The emperor was holding Chu Xiang and rowing the boat on the lake. He was blowing the flute for her and looking at her with such a gentle gaze. It was clear that his heart was moved by her. Why could Chu Xiang get what she couldn't get so easily? She couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept it. She stroked the cat that she had specially trained in her arms. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly. She pretended that her hand had slipped and dropped the cat. The cat instantly jumped into the flowers and disappeared without a trace. Imperial concubine, she was surprised and chased after it a few steps. She pretended to be unhappy and vented her anger on the palace maid. However, she seemed to be more angry at the emperor for favoring the imperial Guifei. After a few words, she angrily left and only told the palace maid to find the cat. While she was making a ruckus to attract everyone's attention, her personal palace maid was on the other side of the lake and was quietly diving into the water. This palace maid was very good at swimming. When imperial concubine she heard that the emperor and the imperial Guifei were rowing on the lake alone, she sent her over. Although it wasn't the original plan, it would be a pity to miss such a good opportunity. The palace maid's entire family was in the hands of imperial concubine Shi, so she didn't dare to disobey her orders. She didn't even dare to do a bad job. Even if she was very afraid, she still swam steadily towards the boat. She held an incomparably sharp dagger in her hand, and a bottle of highly poisonous crane red, stabbing the dagger and pouring the poison. The emperor was so far away from the shore, so he should die. And she, wearing the clothes of the imperial Guifei's palace maid, would destroy her own appearance and commit suicide. No one would know who she was. Although the plan was rushed and crude, as long as the emperor died, no one would pursue this matter. The regent would definitely protect imperial concubine Shi. The chief family would definitely recover. Then all of her family members would be able to live well. The palace maid closed her eyes and made a decision. She gripped the weapon in her hand and prepared to flip the boat over. The moment the emperor fell into the water, she would assassinate him. As for the imperial Guifei, she was a weak woman. She would probably be frightened and choke as soon as she fell into the water. There was nothing to be afraid of. Chu Xiang hugged Xiao Yuanzhao's waist. After he finished playing a song, she raised her head to look at him and said with a smile, "The emperor played really well." Her lips looked so soft. It would definitely be very comfortable to kiss. Xiao Yuanzhao's expression changed. Looking at Chu Xiang's smiling face, he didn't know how to react. He unconsciously looked at Chu Xiang's lips. They were red and soft. Wouldn't it be more comfortable to kiss her lips? No. It was fine if he thought about it, but how could a virgin like Chu Xiang think about this kind of thing? Chu Xiang saw that he kept looking down at her lips. She thought about it. Could it be that he didn't know how to kiss? Meeting such an innocent emperor, she couldn't just wait for him to do everything. She still had to leave in a while. Therefore, Chu Xiang hugged Xiao Yuanzhao's neck and raised her head to kiss his lips. Xiao Yuanzhao's entire body froze. Chu Xiang was talking about him in her heart again, saying that he didn't know how to kiss. He didn't even have time to react before she kissed him. His hand that was holding Chu Xiang tightened. Thinking that he didn't know how to kiss Chu Xiang, he closed his eyes and was about to fiercely kiss her. At this time, the heaven and earth mirror suddenly reacted. There was an assassination attempt in the lake. Chu Xiang suddenly moved back and looked at the lake. She turned around and dived into the bottom of the boat to grab the palace maid's wrist. Xiao Yuanzhao was stunned. Chu Xiang had moved back. He did not read Chu Xiang's thoughts and did not understand why Chu Xiang would jump into the lake when they had just kissed. Did she really dislike him for not knowing how to kiss? Chapter 344. There was an unusual movement in the lake. Xiao Yuanzhao was only stunned for a moment before he reacted. Thinking of how the imperial Gui consort blocked the arrow for him when he was attacked last time, his heart tightened, and he subconsciously jumped into the lake to look for Chu Xiang. Liang Zhong was shocked and quickly shouted, "Protect the emperor! Quickly protect the emperor! Quickly save the emperor and imperial Gui consort!" He also jumped into the lake and desperately swam over there, along with all the guards nearby. But the distance was a little far. Even if they were burning with anxiety, they could not get close in an instant. Chu Xiang had already cultivated for a period of time. With her cultivation, she could hold her breath for a long time. She found that Xiao Yuanzhao had also jumped down and was stunned for a moment. She could not understand why the emperor did not run but went into the water instead. She did not think much about it. To prevent the palace maid from attacking Xiao Yuanzhao, she directly dragged the palace maid deeper and quickly distanced herself from Xiao Yuanzhao. Xiao Yuanzhao was anxious and angry. He quickly swam towards her. The palace maid was terrified. She did not even touch the corner of the emperor's clothes, and did not have time to disfigure her face. The imperial Gui consort saw everything clearly. The imperial Gui consort could not be left alive. Her eyes were full of murderous intent. She struggled desperately, wanting to use the dagger to stab Chu Xiang. Even if Chu Xiang did not cultivate, she knew many combat moves. Moreover, she had cultivated. This level of skill was not enough to withstand a single blow from her. She wanted to keep the palace maid alive for interrogation. She pressed the palace maid's acupuncture point. The palace maid's hand lost strength for a moment, and she dropped the dagger. Then she dislocated the palace maid's arms and chin. The palace maid opened her mouth and suddenly drank a lot of water. She choked and coughed until her eyes bulged. She stared at Chu Xiang with a face full of horror. Xiao Yuanzhao was also shocked. He stopped beside Chu Xiang and looked at Chu Xiang as if he did not know her. Chu Xiang knew martial arts? How was that possible? If she knew, she would not have been injured so easily when she was attacked last time. Chu Xiang turned and glanced at him. She pointed upwards and signaled him to swim up quickly. At this time, many bodyguards rushed over to save her. Chu Xiang was afraid that they would kill the palace maid on impulse, so she grabbed the palace maid and swam upstream. Xiao Yuanzhao came back to his senses and reached out to hold her arm. He helped her swim up, eager to know what she was thinking. In the end, what he heard shocked him. This palace maid is one of Imperial concubine Xi's people, but since she dared to assassinate the emperor, she definitely won't confess. Lock her up in a dark room, destroy her spirit, break her 10 fingers, break every inch of her bones, and use the method of death by 1,000 cuts to make her watch as her flesh is cut off. She shouldn't be able to hold on for long before she confesses. It's best to get involved with the regent, and think of a way to make him suffer. They floated to the surface of the water. Xiao Yuanzhao was panting heavily, not because he was suffocating, but because he was shocked. In the past, if he wanted to know someone's confession, he would ask his subordinates to interrogate them. He never knew the specific methods of torture. Now he knew from Chu Xiang that there was nothing to be afraid of, but he was shocked that Chu Xiang knew about these things. She even calmly thought of so many methods. She was suddenly attacked by an assassin. It was fine if she didn't panic, but she actually started to scheme against the regent? She was even calmer than him, the person involved. Chu Xiang had already thrown the palace maid to a bodyguard and ordered, "Watch carefully, don't let her die. I want to interrogate her personally." The bodyguard was stunned and looked at Xiao Yuanzhao. Xiao Yuanzhao took a deep breath and nodded. "Listen to Imperial concubine. Beloved concubine, let's go ashore first. Your injury has just healed. Quickly go back and call the imperial physician." Chu Xiang smiled and said, "I'm fine, don't worry." Facing her gentle smile, Xiao Yuanzhao felt a little helpless. He should be suspicious of her, but he just couldn't raise his heart. He was worried that she would catch a cold. He was simply led by the nose by her. He sighed and held Chu Xiang's hand. "Let them interrogate the assassin. No matter how tight her mouth is, they can pry it open. You're really brave. How did you find her? Next time something like this happens, just call for help. You're not allowed to put yourself in danger." Yes. Next time, I'll let the emperor protect me. I won't go anywhere." Chu Xiang felt that he was her man now. Of course, she had to coax him. Xiao Yuanzhao's ears turned red. He felt that he seemed to be the weaker party in front of her. He pursed his lips and reached out to hold Chu Xiang's waist. "Come on, Zhen's back. Zhen will swim with you." Of course, Chu Xiang wouldn't refuse. She flipped over and lay on Xiao Yuanzhao's back. Xiao Yuanzhao slightly curled the corner of his lips and swam forward forcefully. He ignored the boat that the bodyguard brought over. Liang Zhong and the bodyguards felt blind, especially Chu Zhe. He didn't even have a chance to say anything about his sister. He just watched the emperor and his sister flirt with each other. Their hearts were really big. They encountered an assassin. So many of them were so anxious, but these two still had the heart to play here. But after the nervousness, he was happy for his sister. He could see that the emperor really cared about his sister. This was good. His sister would have a good life in the palace in the future. It was very likely that she would ascend to the position of empress. Then even if the emperor liked other concubines in the future, his sister would be the head of the harem and wouldn't be bullied by others. The imperial carriage was already waiting by the shore. Xiao Yuanzhao and Chu Xiong were sent to Taihe Palace as soon as they came ashore. Xiao Yuanzhao gave a series of orders. Imperial concubine Shi and everyone in her palace were arrested and detained. At the same time, the palace was under martial law. No one was allowed to move around. Every palace was strictly checked for any abnormalities. There were also people who left the palace to investigate the movements of the Qi family and the regent. Everything was arranged clearly. Chu Xiong saw that he had arranged everything, so she didn't say anything else. After bathing, she drank a bowl of ginger soup and said to Xiao Yuanzhao, "The emperor still has so many things to do. I won't disturb you. I'll go to the pharmacy to get my herbs." Xiao Yuanzhao didn't have any objections. The regent's matter was very important. Although he was more curious about Chu Xiong and wanted to know how Chu Xiong got her martial arts, he had to deal with the assassin first. The shadow guards were sent out by him to deal with the regent's secret forces. He felt that there were too few people around him that he could use. After thinking about it, he saw Chu Zhe and called Chu Zhe to the imperial study to discuss matters. He was sure that the Chu family was very loyal. Chu Zhe was especially loyal to him. He was also young and hot-blooded. He was the most suitable person to be his confidant. He picked a group of people for Chu Zhe and ordered Chu Zhe to investigate for him and protect his safety. He thought about Chu Xiong leaving and casually mentioned to Chu Zhe, "Imperial Gui Fei saved Jin twice. Women are not inferior to men. She has the demeanor of a mother of the nation. When this matter is over, Zhen wants to give Imperial Gui Fei a surprise." Chu Zhe was happy and quickly lowered his head, saying, "Imperial Gui Fei Nyang must be willing to do anything for your majesty. She doesn't ask for anything in return." Xiao Yuanzhao smiled. She didn't ask for anything in return? She even wanted him to play the flute in return. Otherwise it wouldn't be fair. She even thought that she would leave him as soon as he doted on her. How could she not ask for anything in return? What she wanted in return was huge. However, these words couldn't be said with Chu Zhe. He hinted that he wanted to make Chu Xiong empress just to appease the Chu family. So if Chu Xiong wanted to leave the palace, the Chu family would definitely not help. He was so good to Chu Xiong and even gave her the empress position. How could the Chu family allow her to leave the palace? Xiao Yuanzhao gave Chu Zhe a new identity as the leader of the shadow guards. However, it was a shadow guard with a status on the surface. He only did things in private and didn't need to hide himself. In fact, he was almost done dealing with the regent. The net he cast had caught many of the regent's forces. He was just waiting for a good time to pull in the net. He didn't believe that the assassination this time was caused by imperial concubine Shi. The regent had already tried to assassinate him once. It wasn't impossible for him to do it again. He didn't want to wait any longer. He had to speed up and get rid of the regent in advance. Xiao Yuanzhao was busy. Chu Xiong was fiddling with the herbs in the pharmacy. In fact, these were the pretense on the surface. She had the best herbs in her space. There were all kinds of herbs. She had already chosen the ones to deal with the regent. She set up a pharmacy and ruined a lot of herbs. It was just to take these precious herbs into the space in the name of Scourge. No matter how many herbs there were in the space, they would be used up one day. Of course, she had to replenish them when she had the chance. When she left the palace, she couldn't take these away casually. She might as well scourge as much as she could to fill up the space. After Xiao Yuanzhao fell asleep at night, the entire palace was in a state of silence. Chu Xiong avoided people, quietly left the palace, and sneaked into the regent's mansion. During this time, she was recuperating and also investigating who the regent was. The result of the investigation was that the regent was insidious and despicable. He condoned his subordinates to buy and sell officials and bully the people. Although he did some big things for the imperial court, he also embezzled a lot of public funds. As long as there was someone in the imperial court who didn't submit to him, he would mercilessly suppress them. He was really a selfish person. Now that her injury was healed, she began to prepare to leave the palace. She wanted the Chu family to have a stable environment, and not be harmed by the regent after she left. So she sneaked into the regent's bedroom and smeared the medicine on the jade pendant and thumb ring worn by the regent, as well as on the bed curtain that wouldn't be changed every day. Then she changed the medicine and smeared it on the incense burner in the room. These were the medicines that could cause the regent to have headaches and irritation. If people often had headaches, it would be difficult to think clearly and make accurate decisions. Being irritable would often ruin things and chill the subordinates. Originally, the regent's character wasn't very good. He was usually smiling, but when he was unhappy, he would turn hostile. Starting from here, no one would doubt that even the regent himself wouldn't notice such a change. After all, the emperor had caused him so much trouble. Everything went wrong for him. Wasn't it normal to be irritable? If he didn't have a good rest, it was normal to have a headache. There would be a lot of casualties in the power struggle, and the imperial court would also be greatly weakened. Chu Xiang didn't think it was necessary. With her method, things would be very natural, and it wouldn't take long. At that time, she would go out of the palace to play. Chu Xiang finished everything and returned to the palace smoothly. She comfortably entered the space to cultivate. Second, all the officials went to court as usual. Xiao Yuanzhao sat on the dragon chair and glanced at the peaceful hall without changing his expression. He didn't show any abnormality. Without such an important subordinate as Minister Chu, the regent was working hard to grab another important job recently. The people who submitted to him were also helping. They didn't expect that many things had changed overnight. The emperor accelerated the plan to deal with the regent. The imperial noble consort drugged the regent. They didn't communicate with each other at all, but they unknowingly became comrades. And the people who were targeted by them at the same time wouldn't have a good ending no matter how strong they were. They only had a short arrogant day left. Xiao Yuanzhao listened to the officials arguing below, but his thoughts drifted to Chu Xiang. How did Chu Xiang learn martial arts? Was it this Chu Xiang was no longer the original Chu Xiang, but someone disguised her? Chapter 345. The more Xiao Yuanzhao thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. After court, he headed straight for Taihe Palace. Chu Zhe followed behind Xiao Yuanzhao, not knowing whether he should be happy or worried. He was happy that the emperor seemed to favor his Mimi a lot. He was also worried that none of the favored consorts in history had a good ending. Chu Zhe made up his mind. When he got back, he would definitely tell his father to restrain the words and actions of all the clan members. They could not drag Chu Xiang down. He would also have his mother enter the palace to warn Chu Xiang not to be disrespectful to the emperor just because she was favored. She had to be more careful so that the emperor would not be displeased in the future. These were all sins. Xiao Yuanzhao and Chu Xiang did not know that Chu Zhe was silently worrying. Xiao Yuanzhao found Chu Xiang in the pharmacy and went to hold her hand. Let the palace servants do these rough jobs. You can just watch from the side. Why do you have to do it yourself? Chu Xiang discreetly glanced at the two holding hands and thought, did this person have a hand fetish? What was wrong with holding her hand? Then she smiled. I'm bored. In the past, when I was in the boudoir, I could still play with the jiejia. Now that I'm in Taihe Palace, it's very boring. Don't I have to find something to do? Xiao Yuanzhao's expression froze slightly. He didn't know whether to tighten or loosen his grip on Chu Xiang's hand. Gritting his teeth, he nodded and said, Zhen has time today. How about going to the market with beloved consort? Chu Xiang looked at him in surprise and immediately agreed. All right, then I'll go change my clothes now. Your Majesty should also quickly change. We'll stroll around outside for a while. Chu Xiang thought that she could take a look at her shop after leaving the palace. It would be best if she could go home and visit her family. She could warn them to be loyal to the country and not make mistakes. This was really giving her a pillow when she was sleepy. This was the perfect time to leave the palace. Xiao Yuanzhao watched her lift her skirt and run away. He unconsciously smiled. Originally, he did not plan to go to the Chu family. However, since Chu Xiang wanted to warn the Chu family to be loyal to the country, then he would go along with her. It was the matter of holding hands that made him a little worried. Chu Xiang actually suspected that he had a hand fetish. It was true that no emperor would hold his concubine's hand the moment they met, but Chu Xiang couldn't think of him like that. She really didn't have any respect for him. She was too unruly. He had to find a chance to teach her a lesson. The two of them quickly changed their clothes and left the palace. Chu Zhe and Liang Zhong accompanied them by the side. There were also a few guards guarding in the dark. Where does my beloved consort want to go? Xiao Yuanzhao did not hold Chu Xiang's hand in the carriage, but he deliberately sat next to her, so he could still hear her thoughts. Chu Xiang opened the curtains of the carriage and looked outside casually. I have a few shops that I want to take a look at. I also want to go home and visit my parents. Where do you want to go? Xiao Yuanzhao was stunned by her sudden call of husband. He raised his head and saw Chu Xiang looking back at him with a smile. He suddenly felt his heart beat faster. Chu Xiang put down the curtains and leaned over, leaning on his shoulder. Husband, why are your ears red? She leaned forward and said softly, Husband, do you still remember what happened before the assassination? Before the assassination? Weren't they kissing? Xiao Yuanzhao heard her thoughts. The lips of the emperor were really soft. His ears turned even redder. He was a little happy and a little embarrassed. What was she thinking about? Why did it seem like she was taking advantage of him? This was not okay. He was the stronger one. Xiao Yuanzhao suddenly reached out and hugged Chu Xiang's waist, pressing her down on the soft cushion. He pressed his lips against hers and said dangerously, Of course I remember. You've recovered and want to be a real husband and wife with me? Chu Xiang smiled and hugged his neck. Aren't we husband and wife? In the carriage, it seemed to be quite exciting. There were people outside. Xiao Yuanzhao felt that he was being teased by her thoughts. Without saying another word, he lowered his head and kissed her. Men were self-taught in this area. Xiao Yuanzhao quickly controlled his strength and made Chu Xiang indulge in it with him. He felt Chu Xiang's response and could not retreat. This was a wonderful feeling that he had never felt before. It was as if he was in the clouds, so comfortable that he did not want to come down. Master, we've arrived at the market. Liang Zhong did not know the situation in the carriage. As soon as the carriage stopped, he immediately reported. Xiao Yuanzhao let go of Chu Xiang. He was annoyed. Why did he leave the palace? Otherwise, he could do what he did with Chu Xiang in Taihe Palace. He did his best to calm his chaotic breathing. When he heard that Chu Xiang was also thinking that they should not leave the palace today, he immediately laughed out loud. He hugged Chu Xiang and happily kissed her face. Chu Xiang was a little speechless. What was the emperor so happy about? Could it be that he was satisfied with her kissing skills? Xiao Yuanzhao was even happier. He let her out of the carriage with a smile on his face. Xiang let's go to your shop first. Do you know where it is? Chu Xiang used her spiritual power to force back the abnormal blush on her face. She looked at Chu Zhe. Big brother should know? Chu Zhe hurriedly said, I've been there twice. I'll take you there. Chu Xiang let Qingzhu and Hongrui open a ready-made clothing shop and jewelry shop. Although there were many old shops, the things in her shop won because they were novel and beautiful. They were very competitive. The Chu family was very attentive to the businesses that Chu Xiang named. Not only did they give her a few shops in excellent locations, they also transferred a few useful people to help Qingzhu and Hongrui. With the protection of the Chu family and Chu Xiang's ideas and methods, the shops were already very popular. There were many noble madams and sisters who bought things in her shops. Chu Xiang entered the mausoleum. There were many people coming and going inside. It was very lively. Chu Zhe called out to someone, and Qingzhu quickly ran out. When she saw Chu Xiang, she was so surprised that she almost saluted in public. Chu Xiang pulled her and smiled. I haven't seen you for a long time. Let's go inside. Yes, sister. Sister, this way please. Son-in-law, this way please. Qingzhu was an honest person. When she saw Xiao Yuanzhao, she didn't know what to call him. In a hurry, she called him son-in-law. Xiao Yuanzhao felt that it was quite refreshing. He followed them to the backyard while looking at the situation in the shop. There were no outsiders. Qingzhu immediately knelt down and saluted. Chu Xiang chatted with her for a while, and asked her to take the account book to look at. It was the first time Xiao Yuanzhao saw Chu Xiang doing something serious. He had just kissed Chu Xiang, and his heart was still warm. He didn't want to be too far away from Chu Xiang, so he pretended to look at it with her. As he looked, he found a way. Chu Xiang's shop's account book was unusually clear and concise. There were a few grids on each page, and the accounts were very clear. It was easy to calculate and check the accounts. There wasn't a single extra word. He also found another strange thing. He hadn't even finished reading half of a page when Chu Xiang had already turned the page. The accounts in her mind were exactly the same as the ones in the account book. He said in surprise, "My dear concubine, you can calculate an entire page of accounts with just a few glances? My dear concubine, are you proficient in arithmetic?" Chu Xiang was stunned. She nodded and said, "Yes, I'm quite good at this." She had a photographic memory. She could read 10 lines at a glance. She could also calculate when she looked at it. She was indeed very good at it. Xiao Yuanzhao, who had read her thoughts, was even more surprised. He really wanted to ask her about her photographic memory, but she did not come out, so he could not ask. He felt very suffocated. As for Chu Xiang, she had already continued to look at the account book. She did not take this matter seriously at all, nor did she have any intention of showing off her abilities in front of him. This was different from the other imperial concubines. Imperial concubine Li sang and danced for him, and wanted to show off everything she had learned. When it came to Chu Xiang, why did she not even know a single thing? Xiao Yuanzhao could only ask about something else. Who wrote this account book? It's very concise and very practical. It saves a lot of complicated things. Qingzhu proudly said, "Your Majesty, this was thought of by Her Highness. All of the clothes in this shop were also done by Her Highness." "Oh, my dear concubine has this sort of talent?" Xiao Yuanzhao looked at the side of Chu Xiang's face, and felt that the things that were hidden from Chu Xiang were endless. Every time he interacted with her, he would be able to discover one of her talents. If it was not for him suggesting leaving the palace for a stroll today, how could he have known that Chu Xiang understood these things? Chu Xiang casually said, "It's not worth much. I don't know how to sing or dance, so I have to have some other things that I can take out. It just happens that I have some ideas about earning money." She had already finished looking through the account book and smiled at Xiao Yuanzhao. "Your Majesty feels that this method of keeping accounts is good. I'll see my father later and teach him how to use it in the Ministry of Revenue, all right?" "That would be good." Xiao Yuanzhao agreed with a smile. He knew that Chu Xiang was doing this to talk more with Minister Chu and remind him to be loyal to the country, so he agreed. They could not stay outside the palace for too long. Since they had official business to discuss with Minister Chu, they headed straight to the Chu family. Chu Zhe ran back to report first and asked the Chu family to make arrangements quickly. Although they were in a hurry and did not meet the standards of receiving the emperor was visiting incognito. There was no need to care too much about this. As long as the servants were arranged well and did not offend the emperor, it would be fine. Everyone in the Chu family was excited. Minister Chu and Madam Chu were also very happy. They specially changed into their best clothes and waited at the gate to welcome them. As soon as they saw Chu Xiang get off the carriage, their nose turned sour. This was the first time that their daughter had returned home after getting married. Minister Chu was especially happy. Usually, Madam Chu could enter the palace to see Chu Xiang. Chu Zhe could also see Chu Xiang often when he was with the emperor. The only chance to see Chu Xiang was ruined by the Prince Regent. Until now, he could only see his daughter. He saw that Chu Xiang's face was rosy, and that she was very close to Xiao Yuanzhao naturally. He was relieved and welcomed them in. Xiao Yuanzhao was talking to the father and son of the Chu family in the parlor. Chu Xiang and Madam Chu went to their former boudoir. Being in the Chu family was different from being in the palace. The conversation was more relaxed. Madam Chu quietly asked, Xiang, have you served him in bed yet?" Chu Xiang acted a little shy and lowered her head. "Not yet. Before he wanted to stay. My injury has not recovered yet. I just recovered these 2 days. Mother, don't worry about this. He did not let anyone serve him in bed." Madam Chu looked at her a few times and said worriedly, Xiang Xiang, the emperor is destined to have many concubines. You must not put your heart on the emperor. Otherwise, when he has a new person in the future, you will be sad. Chu Xiang knew what she was going to say. She shook her arm in time to interrupt her and said with a smile, Mother, I know in my heart. You can rest assured. In fact, I came here this time because I have something to tell you. She dismissed everyone and ordered the heaven and earth mirror to monitor the surrounding movements. She leaned over and whispered in Madame Chu's ear. I know that something will happen to the regent soon. You and father, the Chu family must be stable. No mistakes can be made. You must be loyal to the emperor. In the future, father and brother will benefit a lot. Madame Chu was shocked and hurriedly agreed. With Chu Xiang's current level of favor, she did not doubt the authenticity of this sentence at all. Chu Xiang still wanted to say something, but she suddenly saw the emperor's secret guard coming over from the heaven and earth mirror. She did not say what she wanted to say. Instead, she chatted with Madame Chu about other things. She thought in surprise, why did the emperor send the secret guard to watch them? Did he not believe her? Did he not believe the Chu family? If so, she could not leave in peace. The Chu family was so good to her. She could not let the emperor get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. It was not good for the Chu family. It seemed that she had to keep an eye on the emperor's movements in the future to see what the emperor wanted to do. When Xiao Yuanzhao was talking to Minister Chu, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. He had an ominous premonition. However, he thought about it. The plan for the past few days was very smooth. Nothing bad happened, so he threw this premonition to the back of his mind. He praised Minister Chu for raising a good daughter, and urged Minister Chu to learn how to keep accounts and promote it as soon as possible. Not long after, Chu Xiang came to teach Minister Chu how to keep accounts. Xiao Yuanzhao took the opportunity to touch her hand when he handed her a cup. When he heard that she was thinking about his motive for sending someone to monitor her, he suddenly froze. How did she find the secret guard? He did not mean to monitor her. She misunderstood him. Chapter 346. It was not Chu Xiang's first time dealing with the emperor. She understood the emperor's suspicions, heartlessness, and various methods. She would never underestimate any emperor. After discovering that the emperor's secret guards were watching her, she did not relax. She had the heaven and earth mirror by her side when she was cultivating, and when she was not afraid of being watched, she would let the heaven and earth mirror spy on the emperor. Xiao Yuanzhao originally wanted to wait for Chu Xiang to be happy in the Chu family, then return to the palace and stay in Taihe Palace. After all, they were like that in the carriage and went out to play together. After returning to the palace, it was natural for them to stay the night. In the end, because he discovered that Chu Xiang had misunderstood him, it seemed that the feeling of intimacy had suddenly disappeared. He anxiously wanted to explain himself, but he discovered that Chu Xiang no longer allowed him to hold her hand. She was always able to naturally pull away from him. This made him feel very uncomfortable on the way back to the palace, and he was too embarrassed to stay overnight in Taihe Palace. After that, he did not let the secret guards go to Chu Xiang's place. Instead, he let the secret guards check the two shops that Chu Xiang opened, and then check if there were any abnormalities with Qing Zhu and Hong Rui. Chu Xiang found out about this through the heaven and earth mirror. She began to prepare to leave the palace. She did not plan to date the emperor. There were countless handsome men outside the palace. Why would she choose a difficult one? She was not afraid of the emperor investigating anything. After all, she did not do anything with the people around her, and did not leave any traces. No one would be able to find anything unusual. As expected, after the secret guards checked Qing Zhu and Hong Rui, they found that they were not Chu Xiang's confidants. Chu Xiang did not have any confidants, let alone a secret force. Xiao Yuanzhao was puzzled. Once when there was no one around, he muttered, "It's impossible that she does not have any forces. Otherwise, how could she know so many things?" This made Chu Xiang feel very strange. She thought back to her behavior in front of Xiao Yuanzhao. It was completely normal. A favored concubine who did not like to follow the rules and was angry. There was nothing wrong with that. She did not discuss anything with him at all. How could she know so many things? When Xiao Yuanzhao came again, Chu Xiang acted as usual, but she began to use the heaven and earth mirror to observe his every move. Xiao Yuanzhao came to tell Chu Xiang a piece of good news. Minister Chu has already popularized the bookkeeping method and won the praises of hundreds of officials. As soon as he took up the post of Minister of Revenue, he had already made meritorious contributions and secured his position. Zhen had him reveal that this method was thought of by my beloved concubine. Now many people are praising my beloved concubine. Chu Xiang smiled and said, I originally came up with it for the sake of accounting. It's a good thing that it's useful to everyone. I don't want fame. As she drank her tea, she thought that having a good reputation was not bad. The Chu clan would be more stable in the future, and she would be able to leave with peace of mind. Xiao Yuanzhao's expression changed slightly. He was a little annoyed. Why was she leaving again? What did he mean? Could it be that when she discovered the secret guard that day, she was no longer willing to be gentle with him? It wasn't like this in the carriage. Chu Xiang saw the change in his expression through the heaven and earth mirror. She was a little confused. What did she do? She only said a very normal sentence. Why did the emperor's expression change? Xiao Yuanzhao heard her inner thoughts and was shocked. He quickly lowered his eyes and did not reveal his emotions. How could she notice such a subtle change in his expression? She didn't seem to be looking at him. Xiao Yuanzhao felt that Chu Xiang was more and more unfathomable. However, the most important thing right now was to prevent her from leaving. He deliberated. Beloved concubine, what do you like to do when you're bored? If you have a close friend that you want to see, you can invite them into the palace to accompany you. You can also call people to read, play music, and dance. Zhen is a little busy these days. If I have time, I'll take my beloved concubine out of the palace for a stroll. How about it? All right, thank you, Your Majesty. Chu Xiang smiled at him without any interest. Xiao Yuanzhao continued. Zhen forgot to tell you. That palace maid has already confessed that it was imperial concubine, she who ordered her to assassinate Zhen. Now that the Qi family is still useful, imperial concubine, she should be locked up in the palace for the time being. We'll deal with her when the time comes. Chu Xiang nodded. The Prince Regent had already begun to have a headache and had little energy left. She did not care about what would happen to imperial concubine Shi. Anyway, it was fine as long as the emperor did not die. The Chu family's glory and wealth would not be affected. Xiao Yuanzhao tried his best to hold back, so his expression did not reveal any flaws. He was very shocked. Why did Chu Xiang have little energy left for the Prince Regent? He knew that the Prince Regent had a headache and summoned an imperial physician. After the medicine did not work, he even punished the imperial physician. However, Chu Xiang seemed to mean that the Prince Regent was not sick. What happened to the Prince Regent that he did not know? Or did Chu Xiang do something to the Prince Regent? If it was Chu Xiang who did it, then how did Chu Xiang do it? Could it be that Chu Xiang's power was so strong that he could not detect it at all? While Xiao Yuanzhao was shocked, he could not suppress the feeling of excitement and joy in his heart. It was as if he had met his match, and as if he could fight side by side with a partner. Whether Chu Xiang did something to the Prince Regent or not, the Prince Regent often had a headache and was irritable at this time, which was the most beneficial for his plan. His deployment could get twice the result with half the effort. Xiao Yuanzhao was so curious. After returning to his palace, he immediately asked someone to check on the Prince Regent's situation and instructed, find out how often the Prince Regent has a headache, to what extent the headache is, how many times he gets angry in a day, and how many people secretly resent him. Chu Xiang looked at his series of arrangements through the heaven and earth mirror, and was very confused. This Prince Regent was too weak. He only had a headache for a few days, and the emperor could see that something was wrong. However, the emperor was more powerful than she thought. He hid his strength and was very scheming. She asked the palace maids to guard outside the door, and began to cultivate. She was going to leave. At this time, the emperor was dealing with the Prince Regent. He should not care too much about her death. Maybe she could shift the blame of her death to the Prince Regent. Was an imperial concubine she locked up in her palace? She could use imperial concubine, she to accuse the prince regent of another crime. Anyway, the original owner died in the hands of the prince regent's assassin. It could be considered revenge. It was very difficult for the secret guards to find out the specific situation of the prince regent's headache. The imperial doctors could not find the cause, and the prince regent's headache seemed to be getting worse day by day. When he was in pain, he did not have the patience to listen to anyone, and only wanted to lose his temper. It looked very abnormal, but the prince regent secretly invited several doctors, but it was useless. It was just that he did not have a good rest. It would be better if he slept more and did not get angry. However, the prince regent had a headache and could not sleep. He was also very angry, and he was more and more angry. Xiao Yuanzhao was very satisfied with this situation. He sped up the speed of closing the net, cleaned up the prince regent's forces, and deliberately provoked him. The prince regent could no longer happily pretend to be the Maitreya Buddha. He had a gloomy face in the court, which made Xiao Yuanzhao very happy. This day, he appointed his own people to important positions, and made the prince regent suffer a hidden loss. He was in a very good mood, and after the court, he went to Taihe Palace to find Chu Xiang. Chu Xiang was tidying up the storeroom. Xiao Yuanzhao had rewarded her with too many things. She had also received a lot of things when she was conferred the title of imperial concubine. She slowly walked around the storeroom, calculating what she could take away. She knew from the heaven and earth mirror that Xiao Yuanzhao had come, so she walked out and seemed to meet Xiao Yuanzhao. She smiled and said, "Emperor, you've left court? Don't you need to deal with government affairs today? Why do you have time to come here?" Xiao Yuanzhao stepped forward and held her hand. "Zhen will have lunch with you before going to approve the memorials. Beloved concubine, what were you doing just now?" He looked in the direction of the storeroom and said in a good mood, "Is there anything you want? Zhen will have someone send it to you. I want a lot of medicinal herbs. Recently, I have been fiddling with those medicinal herbs according to the medical books, and I accidentally wasted a lot of them. If Emperor wants to give me something, why not just give me medicinal herbs?" Most of the things in the storeroom couldn't be taken away. Only medicinal herbs could be taken away, so she chose medicinal herbs. Xiao Yuanzhao's good mood instantly disappeared. She still wanted to leave. She always wanted to leave. Why did she have to leave him? Her attitude towards him was clearly different before, so why was she in such a hurry to leave? He nodded calmly and said, "Whatever beloved concubine wants, I will send it to you. Come to think of it, beloved concubine has already been in the palace for more than a year and saved Zhen twice. Zhen can only relax at beloved concubine's place. Zhen has already ordered the imperial supervisor to choose an auspicious day to confer beloved concubine as empress. At that time, you and I will be true husband and wife." Hearing this, Chu Zhe was slightly shocked. Didn't the emperor say this was a surprise? Why did it suddenly come out? Chu Xiang didn't feel any joy and just smiled. "Emperor is so good to me." There was no difference between an empress and an imperial concubine. In her eyes, they were all women who were fighting for a man in the inner palace. She had to guard against the emperor killing the donkey when it was no longer useful, using someone else to kill people, and setting up a target to attract hatred. It was better to go out and play. At that time, she could travel with beauties and relax. This time, Xiao Yuanzhao couldn't hold back his expression and his face darkened. What traveling with beauties? She wanted to go out and find a wild man? And those ideas of killing the donkey when it was no longer useful, using someone else to kill people, and setting up a target, was he so cold-blooded and heartless in her eyes? Wasn't he already good enough to her? Which woman didn't fight for a man? He gave her the position of empress and gave her the most pampering. Wasn't that enough? That's right, she could think of traveling with beauties. She clearly wanted to keep a gigolo, so how could she be willing to share a husband with another woman? Xiao Yuanzhao felt like he was being cuckolded and his mood was terrible. He couldn't smile at all. Chu Xiang was puzzled as to why he was suddenly unhappy. Was her gratitude too perfunctory? Should she pretend to be surprised and grateful? It was hard to guess the emperor's thoughts. She should leave quickly. Since the emperor was about to confer her the position of empress, She would go to imperial concubine Shi's place later to show off. After angering imperial concubine Shi would naturally fake her death to escape. Perfect. Xiao Yuanzhao turned his head to look elsewhere at the right time. He didn't want Chu Xiang to see his gloomy expression. But Chu Xiang had already seen it from the heaven and earth mirror. She also saw his fierce gaze and was very puzzled. What happened to the emperor? What did he think of? Could it be that he wanted to teach the Chu family a lesson, and not let the relatives of the Chu family grow up? It didn't matter, she was leaving today. She wasn't the empress yet, and the Chu family wasn't a relative of the Chu family. Xiao Yuanzhao was shocked and immediately adjusted his expression. He didn't understand why Chu Xiang couldn't see him at all, and still knew his expression and gaze. He became more cautious and didn't show any abnormalities. But he was anxious. Chu Xiang was leaving today, and was going to fake her death at imperial concubine Shi's place. If Chu Xiang really left, how could he find Gao Haikua? Xiao Yuanzhao was determined to ruin Chu Xiang's plan, and refused to leave after lunch. Chu Xiang still wanted to fake her death, so she hinted. Is the emperor going to be busy? I'm a bit tired. I'm going to take a nap. Xiao Yuanzhao took her into the inner room. Zhen is also a bit tired. Zhen and my beloved concubine will take a nap together. Chu Xiang was stunned. Serving him should be at night, right? Why did he want to take a nap with her? After Xiao Yuanzhao knew what she was thinking, he deliberately carried her to the bed and pulled down the bed curtain. Chu Xiang was speechless. Was this the rumored breakup canon? Xiao Yuanzhao thought without changing his expression. What kind of canon is a breakup canon? Chapter 347. As a devil cultivator, Chu Xiang did not have much moral integrity. In her opinion, the emperor was going to have a concubine, so of course he did not have much moral integrity. Therefore, she followed Xiao Yuanzhao's strength and rolled onto the bed with him. However, Xiao Yuanzhao's body stiffened. He understood a little. Chu Xiang wanted to be husband and wife with him once and then run away. He was about to explode with anger. What was this woman thinking? Not only did she want to run away, but she also did not care about losing her chastity before running away. That's right, she still needed to have a gigolo. Why would she care about her chastity? Thinking of this, Xiao Yuanzhao was even angrier. He kissed Chu Xiang and went to untie her belt. However, Chu Xiang was unhappy and pushed him. Be gentle, you're hurting me. Or not to do it. The emperor was inexperienced. He was rude and reckless. It was not comfortable at all. Xiao Yuanzhao was so angry that smoke almost rose from the top of his head. However, he subconsciously softened his movements and kissed her earlobe. I'll listen to Xiang. You can do whatever you want. Chu Xiang was very picky, and Xiao Yuanzhao was really inexperienced. He accidentally used his strength and pinched Chu Xiang's waist. Chu Xiang's disgust in her heart was directly reflected in his mind. He immediately rubbed her waist gently. He found that Chu Xiang felt uncomfortable when he pressed her down too heavily. So he immediately lifted his body slightly to give her a comfortable space. After a few times, he was like the person who was most compatible with Chu Xiang. He served Chu Xiang comfortably. She hugged him and responded to him wholeheartedly. She did not reject him anymore. Chu Xiang was still thinking, this emperor was really the best. He was obviously still a virgin, but he was self-taught. He knew everything when he met a woman. Why did she only kidnap him to bed now? Xiao Yuanzhao blushed when he heard the words virgin. Previously, he was always on guard against the prince regent. He was unwilling to be intimate with others in bed, and had no interest in the affairs between men and women. He even despised the few concubines in the harem. Now that he was called a virgin chicken, he felt very embarrassed. It was as if he was still a young boy. However, on second thought, if he had favored other concubines in the past, he might not even have been able to get onto Chu Xiang's bed. This woman had her own ideas. Perhaps she had already run away. He didn't know how to make his first time feel comfortable, but he knew Chu Xiang's intentions. He followed her wishes and even received the most wonderful response. Instantly, he felt as if he was floating in the clouds, like an immortal. Just as he was about to become one with Chu Xiang, he suddenly realized that Chu Xiang was thinking about the erotic pictures she had seen 2 days ago. She wanted to try those embarrassing positions in the erotic pictures with him. He didn't expect that the imperial noble consort would secretly look at erotic pictures and shamelessly ask to try it with him. This completely subverted his understanding of women. He immediately came to his senses and no longer had any romantic thoughts. As soon as she lowered her head, she met Chu Xiang's surprised gaze. The emperor had such a good endowment, yet he couldn't do it? Why did he give up halfway before he even started? Xiao Yuanzhao's anger was stuck in his chest. His face was dark, but he wasn't in the mood right now. How could he continue? He immediately flipped out of bed and grabbed the clothes on the rack to put them on. Chu Xiang blinked. She thought that it was normal for his face to be dark since he was suddenly like this. But wasn't it too unkind to make her feel awkward? She put on the clothes and stood up. Naturally, she grabbed Xiao Yuanzhao's wrist and stood up. Emperor is leaving? She took his pulse and was even more confused. There was nothing wrong with the emperor's body. He was still very energetic and should have been relieved. Why was he suddenly unable to do it? Xiao Yuanzhao's face became even darker. What else could it be? Wasn't it all because of her? He was really tortured by her. Xiao Yuanzhao was afraid that if he stayed any longer, he wouldn't be able to resist saying something that shouldn't be said. He suppressed his unclear emotions and said, Zhen suddenly remembered that the ancestors taught us not to be lascivious during the day. Zhen, we'll come find beloved concubine at night. Now Chu Xiang understood. The ancient people had a lot of rules. It was normal for them not to be lascivious during the day, especially the emperor. His daily life record had to be recorded. If he suddenly remembered the ancestors, it was understandable. The modern era was better. It was free and much more interesting than the ancient era. Chu Xiang sent Xiao Yuanzhao away. Xiao Yuanzhao fell into a daze. What was ancient era and modern era? In his understanding, the past dynasties were ancient era. But what did Chu Xiang mean when she called this place ancient era? Why did she have a modern era, where she was free and much more interesting than here? Was modern era the place she wanted to go? Where was it? As the monarch of a country, he had never heard of it. Xiao Yuanzhao pondered for a while, and put this matter aside for the time being. He ordered Liang Zhong to make arrangements and prepare to capture her. Liang Zhong didn't understand why he had to guard imperial concubine Xi's palace so strictly. After thinking about it, he guessed that it probably had something to do with the regent. He seriously raised the palace's defense to the highest level. Chu Xiang just happened to be meditating to calm the restlessness in her body. With the heaven and earth mirror watching over her, she did not see Xiao Yuanzhao's arrangements. An hour later, she saw Xiao Yuanzhao reviewing memorials through the heaven and earth mirror. Imperial concubine, she was throwing a tantrum at a palace maid. Feeling that the timing was perfect, she had someone change her into beautiful clothes and accessories. She then brought people to imperial concubine Xi's place, and had someone invite the other 3 imperial concubines. With more people, there would be more conflicts. It would be easier for things to get out of hand, and it would be easier for something to happen. She raised her hand and touched the hairpin that she had specially found. This hairpin was a bit large and looked very conspicuous. It was also very suitable for being used as a weapon. Imperial concubine, she was a bit scheming and was quite bold. Since the assassination attempt failed, she must know that she did not have much time left. If there was a chance to kidnap the emperor's most beloved imperial concubine and escape, she definitely would not miss this opportunity. When Chu Xiang arrived, the other 3 imperial concubines had already arrived, but they were unable to enter because the emperor had arranged for guards to firmly guard the palace, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. Imperial concubine Li saw that Chu Xianglai had arrived and went forward to salute, asking, Your Highness, why did you call this concubine and the others to come to imperial concubine Xi's place? I don't know why she angered His Majesty, but His Majesty is not allowing anyone to enter or leave. Chu Xiang faintly smiled and walked towards the entrance of the palace. Oh? This one can't enter either? The guard in charge had already received orders from Liang Zhong that the imperial Gui imperial concubine could enter and exit as she pleased. Thus he respectfully said, "His Majesty has ordered that no one is allowed to obstruct Your Highness the imperial Gui imperial concubine's path. Your Highness the imperial Gui imperial concubine, please." Imperial concubine Li's expression immediately changed. Imperial concubine Jean and imperial concubine Hui's expressions were also not too good. The three of them were not allowed to enter, and these guards did not give them any face, but Chu Xiang was allowed to enter as she pleased. The guards were also very respectful to Chu Xiang. This was simply slapping their faces in front of everyone. The difference in treatment was too clear. They thought about how they had gone to request an audience with the emperor, but were unable to see him. As for the emperor, he had gone to Taihe Palace to eat with Chu Xiang, and their hearts were filled with jealousy towards Chu Xiang. Chu Xiang looked back at them and said with a bit of pride, "Let's go. Come inside with this one to take a look. Today this one has some good news to tell my younger sisters. Imperial concubine, she is a sister to us, so it's natural that she cannot be left out." The three imperial concubines did not know what sort of good news she had, but seeing her gorgeous palace clothes and proud expression, they all had a bad premonition. Almost immediately, they thought of the position of empress. They saw Chu Xiang walk in and quickly followed. Their hearts were a mess. Aside from jealousy, there was also anger. There was even a bit of killing intent. There was no emperor that was infatuated with love. As long as Chu Xiang died, the emperor would be able to see them, right? Imperial concubine, she was currently in dire straits. When Chu Xiang walked in, no one reported to her. She was currently whipping a palace maid in her room with a ruthless expression. Chu Xiang walked in with the three imperial concubines. When she saw the palace maid's miserable state, she shook her head and said, "Younger sister imperial concubine, she is so powerful. If a palace maid made a mistake, just send her to be punished. How can you be so cruel?" Imperial concubine, she glared at Chu Xiang. Her gaze was murderous. She had sent someone to assassinate the emperor. Although the plan was crude, she felt that it would be easy to succeed if it was unexpected. She had sent another trusted palace maid to keep an eye on it, who knew that Chu Xiang would save the emperor and let the emperor see the palace maid's true face. She was now no different from a dead person. She wanted the only trusted palace maid left by her side to be seriously injured and sent out of the palace. She wanted to pass the message to the chief family and the prince regent in order to survive, who knew that when she was whipping the palace maid, Chu Xiang would appear again. Chu Xiang had ruined her plans one after another. She truly hated Chu Xiang to the bone. Chu Xiang looked at the palace maid on the ground with a pitiful expression and sighed. How could such a good person end up like this? Today this one is happy. Regardless of what mistake this palace maid made, she will be forgiven. Servants, take her away to properly treat her injuries. Chu Xiang, this is this one's place. Imperial concubine, she gnashed her teeth and glared at Chu Xiang. Chu Xiang smiled and sat down in the main seat, facing the three imperial concubines. You and her, is there any place in the inner palace that this one cannot move? If this one is unhappy, can she still live in this palace? Imperial concubine Li had always hugged Chu Xiang's thigh. Although she was jealous of her, she was happy to beat a drowning dog. She was the first to step forward and taunt. Could it be that imperial concubine, she still believes that things are the same as before? His Majesty has given the order that nobody is allowed to stop Her Highness the imperial noble concubine from doing anything. For you to be disrespectful to Her Highness the imperial noble concubine. Do you want to move to the cold palace? Just now, the guard had said that nobody was allowed to stop Chu Xiang, but imperial concubine Li had added fuel to the fire to anger imperial concubine Shi. Sure enough, imperial concubine Shi's expression changed. Chu Xiang smiled in satisfaction. She just knew that the three imperial concubines would not be disappointed. They were the easiest to tear into each other. Chu Xiang was preparing to provoke imperial concubine Shi, so she had the heaven and earth mirror investigate the paths and guards around the palace. She just happened to miss the person who had run to report to the emperor. While she was not looking at the emperor, Xiao Yuanzhao received news that Chu Xiang had gone to imperial concubine Shi to show off. He immediately brought a large number of people to imperial concubine Shi's palace. At the same time, he sent out all of the hidden guards and had them stand guard in all directions. They had to stop Chu Xiang. The hidden guards were very puzzled by his orders. They did not understand what it meant to have all of them go and stop Chu Xiang, but they still dutifully stood guard in all directions. Chu Xiang had already finished investigating the guards around the palace. Seeing that the 3 imperial concubines had bullied imperial concubine, she pretty much enough. She brought the topic to herself. Happily and excitedly, she walked over to imperial concubine Shi and stood very close to her. Back then, imperial concubine Shi often considered herself the empress and viewed us as younger sisters. Who knew that His Majesty would make me the empress, while younger sister imperial concubine Shi. She looked imperial concubine Shi up and down, her eyes filled with disdain. You don't have much time left. Imperial concubine Shi had spent the past few days in fear, fearing that she would be executed by the emperor one day. Chu Xiang's words had poked at her sore spot. She stared at Chu Xiang and suddenly thought that if the emperor really did favor Chu Xiang that much, would she have a chance to escape with Chu Xiang as a hostage? Imperial concubine, she happened to see the shiny golden hairpin on Chu Xiang's head. Grabbing Chu Xiang's neck, she pulled out the golden hairpin and placed it against her neck. With a fierce expression she said, "Back up. All of you back up. Otherwise I will kill her." Ziyu was given a fright and quickly shouted, "You imperial concubine Bishan! If our imperial concubine loses a single hair, His Majesty will definitely tear you to pieces." Imperial concubine Li and the others were frightened. While standing behind the palace maids, they stared at imperial concubine Shi in shock. "What are you doing? Quickly let go of the imperial Gui concubine. Have you gone crazy?" Imperial concubine Shi sneered and said, "I have gone crazy. Rather than waiting to die here, it would be better to go crazy for once. Didn't you say that His Majesty dotes on her a lot? Today, I want to see just how much His Majesty dotes on her. Someone go and invite His Majesty in. Chu Xiang is in my hands. Have His Majesty be careful and not do anything that shouldn't be done." Ziyu ran out with a pale face. Chu Xiang, however, suddenly saw the emperor enter the palace with a large number of people through the heaven and earth mirror. Her mind was filled with question marks. Wasn't the emperor reviewing memorials? Why had he suddenly come? She had wanted to set a fire before the emperor came and throw in some evidence to frame the regent. Now that the emperor had come, wasn't this ruining her plans? However, there had been too many coincidences recently, right? This emperor was a bit strange. Chapter 348. Chu Xiang had just discovered the emperor, but before she could do anything, the emperor had already entered the room. When Xiao Yuanzhao saw that she was being held hostage, his expression changed, but he immediately calmed down. He thought that since she was doing this on purpose, she definitely wouldn't be hurt. However, he was still a bit worried. Anger appeared on his face as he stared at imperial concubine Shi and said word by word, "If you dare to hurt the imperial Gui Fei today, Zhen will kill your entire family." Imperial concubine Shi froze for a moment. Then her face was filled with jealousy and hatred. "You're actually doing this for her? Why? Just because she saved you before? Saving the emperor is what she should do. Why do you need to remember her kindness?" Xiao Yuanzhao slowly stepped forward. "Don't say any more. The lives of your entire family are in your hands. Do you want to be the sinner of your entire family?" Imperial concubine Shi's face turned pale. She entered the palace for her family, so how could she let her family be destroyed? However, if she didn't do this, she would definitely die. If she died, what did the prosperity of her family have to do with her? She wouldn't be able to enjoy anything, so why? With this thought, the hairpin in imperial concubine Shi's hand pressed closer to Chu Xiang's neck. Chu Xiang's original plan was ruined. She didn't interrupt the confrontation between the emperor and imperial concubine Shi. Instead, she used the heaven and earth mirror to quickly investigate the surrounding situation. As a result, she was shocked to find that this place was completely surrounded. It was as if they wanted to eliminate the regent prince, which was enough to make it impossible for the people inside to escape, especially the emperor's secret guards, who were tightly guarding several directions. Even if she cultivated, she still hadn't reached the first layer of qi condensation. She couldn't fly, so how could she escape? Since she couldn't leave for a while, Chu Xiang gave up on this plan. She leaned on imperial concubine Shi and looked at Xiao Yuanzhao. Since Xiao Yuanzhao was here, she wanted to see how Xiao Yuanzhao would deal with this matter. Xiao Yuanzhao met Chu Xiang's gaze, and once again stepped forward to have imperial concubine Shi release Chu Xiang. Stop. Imperial concubine Shi coldly said. If anyone comes closer, I'll kill her. In any case, I won't have a good ending. Even if I die, I'll drag someone down with me. Your Majesty, I don't want much. I only want you to issue an edict to let me out of the palace, to let me spend the rest of my life in Jiangnan, and not to make things difficult for my family. I promise that I will never harm Chu Xiang. Her body tensed as she quickly said, this won't affect you at all. My father's position as an official is already gone. It doesn't matter whether I'm dead or alive. Why won't your Majesty let me off? If this decree was issued, there would definitely be people who would follow suit in the future. Then, not only would the emperor be in danger, everyone in the imperial family would be in danger. Everyone knew that they couldn't set this precedent. Xiao Yuanzhao narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, You are very bold. She face-sneered. In order to survive, I can do anything. Men, prepare the brush and ink. Xiao Yuanzhao snorted coldly. With one hand behind his back, he quickly made a few gestures. Liang Zhong immediately responded, lowered his eyes, bowed, and retreated. Imperial concubine, she didn't suspect anything. Instead, she was shocked and angry. Are you really willing to agree to my request for her? Xiao Yuanzhao didn't say anything else, as his gaze fell on the golden hairpin. Seeing that Chu Xiang's skin had been scratched red, he couldn't help but frown. Imperial concubine, she froze, then suddenly began to laugh loudly. You are the emperor, yet you actually fell in love? You've fallen in love with Chu Xiang, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have come today. You wouldn't have put yourself in danger. You would just give orders from afar. You're worried about her. You're worried that she'll get hurt. You're so close to me. Aren't you afraid that I'll try to assassinate you? Imperial concubine Li anxiously shouted. Your Majesty, she's gone crazy. Your Majesty, stay away from her. Don't hurt yourself. Xiao Yuanzhao remained unmoved. Seeing imperial concubine, she tightened her grip on the golden hairpin. He coldly said, If the imperial concubine gets hurt, everything you want won't happen. Imperial concubine, she stopped smiling, and her expression became gloomy. Looking at Xiao Yuanzhao, then looking at Chu Xiang, she sneered. You're quite skilled. You actually managed to capture the emperor's heart. But so what? He just hasn't seen many beauties. In the future, the palace will be filled with beauties. When he has someone new, he definitely won't look at you. Sooner or later, you will end up like me. Shut your mouth. T-shirt impudent. Xiao Yuanzhao's expression changed, and he immediately looked at Chu Xiang's expression. But Chu Xiang had her head lowered, so he couldn't see anything. He was a little anxious. Chu Xiang already disliked him for having too many women, and wanted to run away. Now that she heard imperial concubine Shi's words, he feared that she would be even more unwilling to stay. Liang Zhong brought people back with him and placed the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone on the table. Even the imperial jade seal was placed on the table. He then picked out a brush and presented it to Xiao Yuanzhao. Xiao Yuanzhao saw this and knew that Liang Zhong had already arranged his orders. This brush was the signal. He raised his head to look at imperial concubine Shi, only to see imperial concubine Shi nervously clutching the golden hairpin as she stared at him. He made a gesture of putting down the brush. An imperial concubine, she subconsciously looked at the imperial edict. Xiao Yuanzhao took this opportunity to throw the brush down. The roof suddenly broke open, and two black-clothed secret guards fell down. At the same time, Xiao Yuanzhao rushed towards imperial concubine Shi and reached out to grab Chu Xiang. He shouted, Stop playing, don't hurt yourself. Imperial concubine, she jumped in fright. She subconsciously raised her head to dodge, and her hand loosened. Xiao Yuanzhao had already grabbed Chu Xiang's arm. Chu Xiang was surprised. Did the emperor believe that she could escape danger? Why? Because she saved him in the lake? So he felt that she had skills? Chu Xiang decided to bide her time. She only dodged when Imperial concubine she reacted. She leaned into Xiao Yuanzhao's embrace and quickly retreated with him. In just a moment, the two secret guards had already grabbed Imperial concubine, and firmly restrained her on the ground. Xiao Yuanzhao held Chu Xiang's shoulder and looked at her from head to toe. He worriedly asked, "Are you hurt? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Chu Xiang thought of Imperial concubine she's words of love. Seeing him like this, she had a strange feeling. She shook her head and said, "I don't feel uncomfortable. The emperor came in time. If the emperor came a bit later, I would have suffered." Xiao Yuanzhao looked at her and snorted coldly in his heart. If he came a bit later, she would have disappeared without a trace. He held Chu Xiang's shoulder and turned to look at Imperial concubine she. His expression was cold. "Take her away." Imperial concubine, she tried to assassinate Zhen and the Imperial Gui Fei. Throw everyone in the Qi family into prison and interrogate them strictly. "You can't. You." Imperial concubine she had just shouted when she was knocked unconscious. The two secret guards dragged her away. Everyone who saw them consciously took a few steps back. This was the first time they knew that the emperor had secret guards. After the crisis was over, they were afraid of the emperor. They didn't even dare to speak to the three concubines. Chu Xiang looked at him, and her heart moved. She didn't think that he would send out secret guards to save her. In that kind of situation, it was difficult to save her without a scratch. However, the secret guards were nimble and caught Imperial concubine she by surprise. Naturally, they were different from the Imperial guards. Also, Xiao Yuanzhao personally went to pull her away. He was so close to Imperial concubine she. If Imperial concubine she waved the golden hairpin in panic, it was possible that he would be attacked. Why did he save her like this? Xiao Yuanzhao knew what she was thinking and felt a burst of anger. Why else would he do it? Of course it was because he didn't want her to get hurt. Heartless. However, he didn't think much of it and just did it. Rationally, he didn't know why he saved her like this. Imperial concubine she, he had feelings for Chu Xiang. In the end, it affected him a bit. Now he felt a bit uncomfortable facing Chu Xiang. He lowered his head to look at Chu Xiang and asked softly, "Are you frightened? Let's go back. Zhen will call the imperial physician to take a look at you." Chu Xiang nodded. The three concubines saw that they were about to leave and immediately became anxious. Imperial concubine Hui pretended to be worried and said, "Your Majesty is right. You must take a good look at Imperial concubine. Imperial concubine has a precious body and is the future mother of the nation. Nothing can happen to her." Xiao Yuanzhao's footsteps paused. Future mother of the nation? Imperial concubine Jean was at the side. Imperial concubine has already told us this good news. His Majesty is going to make Imperial concubine she empress. We are all happy for Imperial concubine, but Qishir was shocked and actually. The two of them explained Chu Xiang's flaunting of the empress in a few words. Since the emperor didn't publicly state his position, it meant that this matter hadn't been decided yet. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for Chu Xiang to flaunt it in private? Xiao Yuanzhao knew what the two of them were thinking with a single glance. He lowered his head and chuckled. Looking at Chu Xiang, he said, "You're really impatient. Zhen just finished talking with you and you already told them. That's good. Zhen will mention it in court tomorrow. And let the Ministry of Rights prepare." "Good." Chu Xiang smiled at him. Glancing at the slightly shocked Imperial concubine Jean and Imperial concubine Hui, she left with Xiao Yuanzhao. She knew what they were shocked about. They didn't think that Xiao Yuanzhao would dote on her so much. It was as if he didn't care about anything and indulged her in everything. Don't mention them. She didn't even think about it. She thought that Xiao Yuanzhao would at least be a little unhappy. If Xiao Yuanzhao liked her, she didn't think much about it. The moment she came, Xiao Yuanzhao doted on her like this. Every time she mentioned the concubines, he didn't say anything romantic. Those scumbag emperors would occasionally say something romantic to the people they doted on, right? Only when there was a new one would they abandon the old one. Could it be that Xiao Yuanzhao was the reserved type? The two of them rode on the dragon carriage together. Xiao Yuanzhao's expression was serious as he listened to her wild thoughts. He suddenly realized that she was suspecting him. Chu Xiang closed her eyes and leaned into Xiao Yuanzhao's embrace, but used the heaven and earth mirror to observe his expression. She wondered why he suddenly rushed over. It didn't seem like he was afraid that she would be bullied, but more like he was afraid that she would run away. She was the only one in this world who knew about this. How did he know? When there were too many coincidences, there would always be some unusual traces left behind. Chu Xiang started to recall the details of their interactions bit by bit. There was once when she drank tea. She felt that the taste was not good, so she put it down and didn't touch it again. After that, she heard that Xiao Yuanzhao ordered the servants to throw away the tea, but Xiao Yuanzhao didn't drink the tea at all. Every time Xiao Yuanzhao saw her, he would hold her hand. Every time they ate, he would sit next to her. There were a few times when he was unhappy for no reason. There were many details that she didn't care about and didn't take to heart. Now that she thought about it, there seemed to be something that was about to come out, but she couldn't think of that point. Chu Xiang frowned slightly. Once again, she carefully thought through all the details. Then, she realized that Xiao Yuanzhao's body was tense. Xiao Yuanzhao was nervous. He felt that he had been exposed. Anyone who had such a special ability would not want others to know. Even his heart beat faster. However, he was also curious. Chu Xiang's eyes were closed. How did she know what his expression was? Could it be that she was like him? She also had a special ability? He thought about how Chu Xiang was in the palace, but she knew a lot of things. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find out Chu Xiang's power. Maybe Chu Xiang didn't have any power at all, but she had a special ability that allowed her to check the situation of any place. His heart tightened. If that was the case, wouldn't Chu Xiang know what he was doing at any time? However, right after that, there was a hidden joy in his heart. It was the joy of finding someone of the same kind, the joy of having a companion. It was unusual if he was the only special one in the world. However, if both of them were special, they would be companions. If Chu Xiang was his companion, he felt happy just thinking about it. Chapter 349. Xiao Yuanzhao sent Chu Xiang back to Taihe Palace. Both of them bathed and changed their clothes, calling the imperial physician to check their pulse. Of course, the result was that she was safe and sound, not even surprised. Xiao Yuanzhao said angrily, "Beloved consort, don't interact with dangerous people in the future. If Zhen didn't arrive in time today, who would be Zhen's empress?" Chu Xiang glanced at him, eating the pastry, and said half-jokingly, "If the emperor announced the empress, wouldn't there be a lot of people fighting to be the empress? Do you need me?" Xiao Yuanzhao narrowed his eyes and sat beside her naturally, hugging her waist. "Zhen doesn't want anyone else to be the empress. Zhen only likes you." Chu Xiang saw that he leaned over again. Although she didn't understand why, she subconsciously thought that it was troublesome to peel grapes. She wanted to eat grapes but didn't want to peel them. Xiao Yuanzhao didn't think much, directly peeling the grapes and feeding them to her mouth, saying, "Although the imperial physician didn't surprise beloved consort, Zhen is still worried about beloved consort. Zhen still has some memorials to approve. Why don't beloved consort follow Zhen to the imperial study?" Chu Xiang ate the grapes he fed her and nodded naturally. "Okay, I haven't been there yet. I also want to be with the emperor all the time." Liar. Xiao Yuanzhao immediately thought of this word in his heart. He was angry and amused. His imperial Guifei was better at acting than anyone else. She clearly wanted to run away, but she still coaxed him. He didn't expose her, holding her hand and going to the imperial study. He was anxious to know if she could look anywhere at will, so he deliberately said in the imperial study, "The regent is not feeling well recently, and his temper is getting more and more irritable. I heard that the imperial physician was called today. I don't know how it is." He thought that Chu Xiang would subconsciously look at the regent's side and have some thoughts in her heart. Who knew that Chu Xiang was actually thinking, How could the regent be irritable? Wasn't he always smiling? Xiao Yuanzhao was stunned for a moment. His expression changed slightly, and then returned to normal in an instant, remaining calm. However, Chu Xiang kept staring at him with the Qingquan mirror, and just happened to catch his change. Ever since Chu Xiang had some suspicions about him, she controlled her thoughts and didn't think about things that she didn't want others to know. This might be difficult for others, but for her, her spiritual power had long been strengthened to a terrifying degree after 10,000 years of cultivation, and time after time transmigrations. It was easy for her to control her own thoughts. Her 2 tests allowed her to verify her guess. The emperor knew what she was thinking the moment he touched her. That was why he peeled grapes for her, and why she was so shocked when she didn't know about the regent. She had drugged the prince regent before, so of course she had thought about the prince regent. Today, the sudden change in his heart had caught the emperor off guard, allowing her to catch a flaw. The emperor was indeed the emperor. His acting skills were even better than the best actors. He could even fool her. But who would have thought that there was someone in this world who could read minds? Why would she be on guard against this for no reason? Chu Xiang wanted to laugh a little. She never thought that she would overturn her carriage in this place, and be blocked on her way out of the palace. She was confused why the emperor went to imperial concubine Xi's place and arranged so many guards. So it was to catch her. Now, she was not in a hurry to leave. Looking at the emperor's anxious appearance, she suddenly became interested. Reading minds, what a novel thing. She seemed to have found a new pleasure. Teasing the emperor must be very interesting. It was much more interesting than going out of the palace and sightseeing. Chu Xiang took the initiative to pull his hand, and asked him to look at the treasures on the shelf. She smiled and said, "Emperor, the things you gave me aren't the best? The good ones are all here with you." She thought in her heart, "It seems that the Prince Regent's drug has already taken effect. Then the Emperor and the Chu family will have a better life in the future. She can leave with peace of mind." She saw Xiao Yuanzhao's eyes relax a lot from the heaven and earth mirror. Xiao Yuanzhao looked at her and laughed. "You are the Imperial Gui Fei, so there are restrictions on the things you use. Zhen can't give you all of Zhen's things. But if Xiang becomes the Empress, there won't be many restrictions. Zhen will open the treasury for you to choose." Chu Xiang stood on her tiptoes and kissed him on the cheek. "Emperor, don't go back on your words." The emperor was so good that he didn't even want to leave the palace. She saw the smile in Xiao Yuanzhao's eyes. Seeing that Xiao Yuanzhao was about to kiss her, she pushed him back and said, "Isn't the emperor going to approve the memorials? I don't want to stay here until late at night. Go and do your work. We'll eat dinner together." Xiao Yuanzhao nodded. He pulled her hand and placed her on the soft couch. He ordered people to put in pastries and fruits. He said casually, "Zhen listens to the osmanthus flowers in Osmanthus garden. Zhen will send people to take a look. If it blooms, Zhen will take you there tomorrow. Does beloved consort want to go? I don't know if the scenery in Osmanthus garden is beautiful or not." Since Chu Xiang knew his background, she naturally knew his purpose for doing all this. He had heard so much of her thoughts in the past, so he would definitely be suspicious of the things she knew. Not only did he not kill her or imprison her, he even wanted to make her the empress. She felt that she could tell him a secret. Her mind moved. Without thinking, the heaven and earth mirror went to Osmanthus garden, and showed her the scenery there. The osmanthus flowers hadn't fully bloomed yet. She smiled naturally and said, "It's probably not the right time yet. The flowers haven't fully bloomed yet. Emperor, send people to keep an eye on it. When all the flowers in the garden have bloomed, we'll go take a look." Xiao Yuanzhao made a sound of acknowledgement, and ordered Liang Zhong to send people to keep an eye on Osmanthus garden. Then he let Chu Xiang rest and turned to read the memorials. He secretly took a breath and waited for Liang Zhong's reply. An hour later, when he was resting, Liang Zhong reported at the right time that only half of the osmanthus flowers had bloomed and not fully bloomed. Xiao Yuanzhao's thoughts fell. He felt a sense of assurance that he had guessed correctly. At the same time, he felt a bit excited and lost. There really were people as special as him in the world. Presumably, the imperial Gui consort was the same as him. She had activated her superpower when she was on the verge of death during the assassination. They had the same experience, the same uniqueness. They were husband and wife, the most intimate people. He couldn't help but feel happy. But there was also the side of the emperor that was on guard rationally. Even though he trusted Chu Xiang very much, he would still naturally think, should the emperor not keep such a dangerous person? She could see anything. Didn't that mean she could also monitor him? She still wanted to leave the palace. When she left the palace, what would she do with her superpower? And the drug she gave to the Prince Regent no one knew. Even he couldn't find out the inside story. Such a dangerous person. Should he really let her go? Chu Xiang ate the pastries as she read the storybook. Through the heaven and earth mirror, she found that Xiao Yuanzhao seemed to be reading the memorials, but was actually distracted. She guessed what he was thinking. Any qualified emperor had to think about these things. She also wanted to test him. She walked over with a piece of pastry and a storybook. When Xiao Yuanzhao looked up, she directly sat in his arms. Today's pastry is especially delicious. Try it. Xiao Yuanzhao looked down at the pastry by his mouth. He opened his mouth and ate it. His gaze fell on Chu Xiang's face. He hugged her tightly. It really is delicious. Chu Xiang leaned on him and showed him the storybook. Emperor, have you read these before? It's the story of the beautiful clothes and the angry horses in the Jianghu. It's very interesting. I grew up in my boudoir and haven't left the capital. Emperor, how about we go together when we have time in the future? If the emperor was willing to accompany her out of the palace from time to time, she could stay. Today Shifei the emperor had fallen in love with her. She didn't know if it was true. Chu Xiang looked up at Xiao Yuanzhao. Xiao Yuanzhao heard what she was thinking and his expression unconsciously softened, bringing a smile. Emperor and Empress going out of the capital incognito? You wish, but if you often accompany Zhen like today, Zhen can consider it. Often like this? The imperial study was so boring. Would she just sit here and watch him handle political matters? It would be better to just listen to imperial concubine Li sing. She couldn't even be bothered with palace matters, so how could she be happy to watch him handle matters? Chu Xiang's thoughts spun and she shamelessly said, if I don't come and those officials find out, won't they say bad things about me? When that time comes, I'll cause trouble for my father and mother for no reason. Xiao Yuanzhao had already heard her thoughts and froze for a moment before finding it a little funny. What was he guarding against her for? It had been so long. When he was with her, she was clearly the laziest. She did not care about anything and only cared about enjoying life. Even her father's promotion was directly asked for from him. She even remembered to go home and tell her father and brothers to be loyal and patriotic. The most outrageous thing she had done was perhaps drugging the Prince Regent. And that was for the sake of helping him. Just like she had thought today, if something happened to the Prince Regent, he and the Chu family would have better days. She placed him in the same position as the Chu family. When Xiao Yuanzhao thought of this, he knew that he was already biased. He did not want to guard against her at all. These were all excuses. He just trusted her, and he had unconsciously trusted her after interacting with her for a while. Otherwise, just the matter of drugging him, if his father emperor was here, he would definitely have her executed immediately to prevent any future problems. He still remembered how relaxed he had been in Taiha Palace during this period of time. That was the only place that was not guarded aside from his own palace. He also laughed a lot more there, and this was all because Chu Xiang was there. To him, Chu Xiang was already the most special existence. Xiao Yuanzhao tightened his arms and buried his head in Chu Xiang's neck, saying in a muffled voice, "You just want us to treat you well. I've never seen you take the initiative to come and find us. How could it be that easy?" Chu Xiang's heart was moved and she hugged him. "I was worried that you would find me annoying if I came to find you." At the same time, she thought to herself, "You have so many women in the imperial harem. There will be even more women in the future. Wanting me to take the initiative to come over is wishful thinking." Xiao Yuanzhao was a little speechless. He suddenly thought of the biggest problem between them. She could not allow him to have another woman. He raised his head and looked at her helplessly. "How could us find you annoying? You should always be by us side." Chu Xiong smiled and deliberately thought. Other women like to give him soup and snacks the most, but I don't want them. It was really unfair. She was so powerful, but she did not think of taking in 3 husbands and 4 attendants. He actually wanted to take in 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. He still wanted her to be happy to be with him. How could that be possible? Xiao Yuanzhao had never thought about this matter. Now that he thought about it according to her thoughts, it was actually very reasonable. Other women were not like this, but for a woman like Chu Xiong who had special abilities, what kind of handsome man could she not want? She had already wanted to leave the palace to have fun and have a male companion. If she stayed in the palace, she would have to serve the same husband with other women. What right did she have to stay? He did not notice at all that in this period of time, he had gradually accepted the idea that Chu Xiong did not allow other women to have sex with her. So this time he did not resist at all, and just followed Chu Xiong's thoughts. She was special in his heart. Without relying on men, she had the ability to establish a family business. She did not need to rely on a family, did not need to rely on a man. Then what she received should be different from other people. If he only let her be a woman fighting for favor in the inner palace, it was simply a humiliation to her. She would run away as soon as she found a chance. The idea of not wanting Chu Xiong to leave suppressed his old thoughts of having 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. He thought about other women, and suddenly felt that he didn't really want other women. At this time, Chu Xiong was reading a novel and saw the male and female protagonists falling in love, talking to each other under the moonlight. She looked at Xiao Yuanzhao and felt that she had tested his bottom line enough today. She moved around on his body and picked up the novel for him to see. Emperor, look at how interesting the people of Jianghu are. You have never said such nice things to me. Xiao Yuanzhao looked at the novel and found it funny as he said, "This is all nonsense, you still take it seriously? Of course, who cares if it's real or fake, we can all do this." Chu Xiong picked up a cup of tea to feed him. She smiled as she thought, after talking to each other under the moonlight, they can try the positions in the erotic pictures. Xiao Yuanzhao suddenly turned his head and spat out a mouthful of tea onto the ground. He choked until his face turned red. Chapter 350. Whatever thoughts Xiao Yuanzhao had, he was defeated by the words Chang'ong too. He wanted to seriously think about Chu Xiong's danger, but he couldn't be serious anymore. He angrily pulled Chu Xiong into his arms and kissed her until she couldn't breathe. Only then did he let her go back to the couch to continue reading. He also finished the rest of the memorials. However, the scene of him and Chu Xiong being intimate on the bed kept appearing in his mind. It made his mouth dry and he didn't know how many cups of tea he drank. This caused Liang Zhong to look at him many times, worried that he was not feeling well. Finally, he finished reading the memorials. He was just about to go to the palace with Chu Xiong when the people who went to the Qi family to search the property returned to the palace to report. At the same time, the Prince Regent, Minister Chu, and several officials entered the palace to ask for an audience, interrupting his good deed. The Prince Regent walked into the imperial study without being announced. Xiao Yuanzhao's face darkened and looked at him coldly. He said unhappily, "Imperial uncle is becoming more and more unruly." The Prince Regent was startled. He narrowed his eyes and stared at him. He snorted. "The emperor is becoming more and more impressive. He doesn't have any respect for his elders. How can he set an example for the servants?" He saw Chu Xiong, who just stood up beside the couch, and sneered. In the emperor's eyes, is the imperial study a place to play with the imperial concubines? Even if the emperor likes to add incense to his sleeves, this is too absurd. The Prince Regent has been moody recently and has lost his cool. Minister Chu stepped forward and glanced at the Prince Regent. He said lightly, "The emperor and the imperial noble consort were assassinated together. They must have been frightened. Why can't they be together? This dynasty doesn't strictly prohibit the imperial concubines from entering the imperial study. We entered the palace to care about the emperor's safety and to find out the inside story of the assassination. We hope that the Prince Regent won't lose his sense of propriety." The Prince Regent had a splitting headache and couldn't control his temper. He glared at Minister Chu and shouted, "Who do you think you are? You dare to lecture me? Guards! Take him out and whip him 50 times. Emperor, the Prince Regent's actions are clearly looking down on you. Qinxia thinks that he should be punished the most. Chu Xiang walked to Xiao Yuanzhao's side and pulled his arm. She glared at the Prince Regent with dissatisfaction. The ministers looked at her in astonishment. She was just a favored concubine. She usually didn't do much. They didn't care when her father and brother were promoted and gained the emperor's favor. They never thought that she would dare to interrupt in this kind of situation, and even have the guts to punish the regent. Even Minister Chu was worried for her. He planned to plead for her immediately if something went wrong. Who would have thought that Xiao Yuanzhao agreed and said, "The regent is punishing Zhen's officials in front of Zhen. What is the meaning of this? Could it be that the regent is dissatisfied with me and wants to exercise the power of the emperor on my behalf?" These words were too heartrending. The ministers all knelt down and said in unison, "Your Majesty, please calm down." They all regretted entering the palace today. Only the Prince Regent was still standing there. His expression was already cold as he looked at Xiao Yuanzhao gloomily. "Your Majesty seems to be implying something. Is it that you can't tolerate me anymore?" Xiao Yuanzhao had one hand behind his back while the other hand was casually placed on the imperial table. His fingers tapped lightly as he said in a rather dignified manner, "This is already the second time imperial concubine. She has tried to assassinate me. I'm sure Prince Regent is very clear about who instigated her. I'm sure Prince Regent is also very clear about why the Qi family committed those crimes. Counting the assassination in the hunting ground, Prince Regent can't wait to take Zhen's life." The Prince Regent's pupils suddenly shrank. His hands and his wide sleeves clenched into fists defensively. The other ministers were already shocked and silent. They did not dare to make any sound. They realized that the emperor was going to get rid of the Prince Regent. If what the emperor said was true, then the Prince Regent had sent people to assassinate him 3 times. He could no longer tolerate the emperor. The outcome of their game was about to be decided. As for the ministers, they were afraid that if they were not careful, their entire family would be wiped out. Everyone became nervous and did not dare to breathe loudly. The Prince Regent's headache was too severe. He could not keep calm at all. He felt a strong sense of crisis and ordered the guards to protect him first. However, after he shouted twice, he found that no one inside or outside the imperial study room moved. He suddenly broke out in a cold sweat and looked around in surprise. Only then did he find that in the short 2 days that he did not pay attention to the palace, none of the people he had planted around the emperor were left. Xiao Yuanzhao did not say much. He waved his hand and Chu Zhe, who was at the door, rushed to the Prince Regent with the secret guards. He coldly looked at the Prince Regent's crazy counterattack and fought fiercely with them. He protected Chu Xiang and brought her to a safe place. In just a moment, the Prince Regent was defeated. He was knocked on the back of his neck by Chu Zhe with the hilt of his sword. He fainted softly on the ground and could not scold anymore. Xiao Yuanzhao looked at him from afar. He had an unclear feeling. Originally, according to his plan, it would take at least 2 months to take down the Prince Regent. It was Chu Xiang who helped him secretly. He also heard Chu Xiang's voice and cooperated with Chu Xiang to shorten the time. The Prince Regent fell just like that. He did not lose a single soldier. It was much simpler than the bloody scene he had expected. Even because of the Prince Regent's constant headache and lack of rest, his strength was weakened when he fought. He could not even kill a single secret guard and was knocked unconscious. Chu Xiang deserved the credit for taking down the Prince Regent so easily. It was a pity that he could not announce it. He suddenly felt that it was a loss for Chu Xiang to stay in the palace with him. He could not help but turn his head to look at Chu Xiang. He held Chu Xiang's hand tightly. Chu Xiang smiled at him and said, "Congratulations, Emperor." He also knew what he wanted to hear. The emperor was wise and powerful. He would definitely be a famous ruler. The Chu family's loyalty to the emperor was the best choice. As expected, Xiao Yuanzhao's expression softened. He ordered the Prince Regent to be put in prison, and ordered Chu Zhe to search the Prince Regent's residence and arrest everyone related to the assassination. This was all arranged after he knew that Chu Xiang wanted to frame the Prince Regent. He could not let Chu Xiang go. However, he could take advantage of the situation to frame her. Using imperial concubine Shi and the Qi family, he could directly expose the Prince Regent's background. Fortunately, the Prince Regent was troubled and had a bad temper. He did not have the patience to pay attention to him every day. In the past 2 days, he had removed all the spies in the palace without being discovered. He also kept an eye on the remaining forces of the Prince Regent. Once the Prince Regent was captured, all the people related to him would be involved. This matter could be wiped out. Although he was the one who set the charges, none of them were innocent. At most, this action would just change the name of arresting them. Chu Zhe accepted the order and left. Chu Xiang also proposed to return to Taihe Palace first. After such a big thing happened, Xiao Yuanzhao would probably discuss with the ministers late into the night. It was not suitable for her to stay in the imperial study. It was also very boring. However, Xiao Yuanzhao was not at ease to let her return to Taihe Palace. He always felt that she would run away at any time when she left his sight. He thought for a while and coaxed Chu Xiang to go to his palace. He also called a few secret guards to protect her. Chu Xiang agreed with a smile. She did not feel unhappy at all. Only then did Xiao Yuanzhao feel relieved. He felt that she might really not want to leave the palace and concentrate on dealing with the business with the ministers. Chu Xiang took a tour around Xiao Yuanzhao's sleeping quarters, then went to sleep on the dragon bed. Now that the emperor was so fun, she did not want to leave the palace. Naturally, she did not care about the secret guards who were watching her. Xiao Yuanzhao came back very late. After asking the palace servants, he knew that Chu Xiang was sleeping. His heart softened a little. When he walked to the dragon bed and saw Chu Xiang, who looked much gentler after sleeping, he felt that his tiredness disappeared. He thought that imperial concubine she was probably right. He was attracted to Chu Xiang, an imperial noble consort who was two-faced and better at acting than him. She was also the only woman who did not have any intentions towards him, and did not want to get anything from him. Xiao Yuanzhao lowered his head, and helped Chu Xiang tidy up the loose hair by her cheeks. Chu Xiang had woken up a long time ago. At this time, she slowly opened her eyes and looked at him in confusion. Then, she reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, softly whispering, "Why did you only come back now?" She was waiting to try out the movements of the erotic pictures, but she had to wait for so long. Xiao Yuanzhao's ears turned red, but he was not curious about the erotic pictures that she could not forget. Following her strength, he covered her body and waved his hand to order everyone to leave. He gently kissed the side of Chu Xiang's neck and said by her ear, "Xiang, has been married to me for so long, but we have not consummated our marriage. Today, Zhen has gotten rid of a big problem, and is very happy. Why don't we become true husband and wife today? I'll listen to Emperor." Chu Xiang thought that it would be good if he did not do it at the crucial moment like last time. This thought was too heart-wrenching. Xiao Yuanzhao's movements paused. Then he passionately followed Chu Xiang's wishes and became intimate with her. He made her feel comfortable everywhere, and did his best to wash away that bad impression from before. Chu Xiang never knew what it felt like to do this kind of thing when their hearts and minds were connected. She knew this time. The main reason was that Xiao Yuanzhao understood her heart and knew how to please her at all times. Then this kind of thing between the bed and the mattress naturally caused people to be endlessly addicted. It was too wonderful for words. The movements in the bedroom only stopped after midnight. Liang Zhong stood guard outside, and was happy for his master from the bottom of his heart. He still remembered that when the imperial Gui Fei was not able to serve him in bed, the emperor came back with a dark face and dirted the bedding at night. Now that the emperor and imperial Gui Fei had consummated their marriage, the emperor had truly grown up. Liang Zhong was very gratified. Originally, he thought that after the imperial Gui Fei served him in bed, she would definitely be sent back to Taihe Palace. He did not expect that after calling for water, the emperor would have the imperial Gui Fei stay to sleep with him, letting a concubine spend the night in the emperor's bedroom. This had never happened before. But no one went to speak the truth. Everyone silently warned themselves not to offend the imperial Gui Fei. This was the person that the emperor really doted on the most. No one could offend her. Chu Xiang laid in Xiao Yuanzhao's arms and hugged him. She did not care about the rules of sleeping separately in the palace at all. She even purposely thought that since she was so happy with the emperor, she should just stay. If she was the emperor, she would definitely only take him as her imperial husband and not accept any other person into the palace. Xiao Yuanzhao opened his eyes and turned his head to look at her, feeling both angry and amused. Then he heard that in her heart, as long as he did not touch other women and treated her well, she would not leave and grow old hand in hand with him. Xiao Yuanzhao's lips unconsciously curled. It was the first time he felt that the words, grow old hand in hand, were so moving. He held Chu Xiang tightly in his arms and gently kissed the space between her brows. He silently thought about how to realize the matter of not having a harem. Unknowingly, he had already accepted her request. She didn't even say it out loud. But at this time he was holding Chu Xiang and felt that it was as sweet as syrup. Every emperor was lonely at the top. It was hard to find someone who understood them. And it was even harder to spend the rest of their life with their sweetheart. How lucky was he to be able to sit on the country and be in love with his sweetheart. Maybe when he was in a life and death situation, the heavens had given him the ability to read minds so that he could distinguish between loyalty and treachery and cherish everything by his side. Chapter 351. Xiao Yuanzhao had two happy events. At the morning court the next day, the tensed officials were surprised to see the smile on his face. Thinking about it, it was probably because the emperor really hated the prince regent, and was so happy after taking down the prince regent. The few neutral parties who didn't help the emperor deal with the prince regent lowered their heads, afraid that they would offend the emperor. At the same time, they secretly cursed Minister Chu for being a sly old fox. He quietly turned to the royalists at the critical moment, and it was Chu Zhe who led the team to arrest the prince regent. Now the biggest winner was the Chu family. Even the imperial noble consort who was favored by the emperor was going to be made empress. The glory of the Chu family was unstoppable. Some officials who knew how to read the situation saw that the important matters had been discussed, and stood up at the right time to propose making Chu Xiang empress. The reason was easy to find. The emperor had been attacked 3 times, and the imperial noble consort had saved him twice. She had done a good job in managing the imperial harem, and had also done a good job in discovering imperial concubine Xi's disloyalty. It was perfect to make her empress. Anyway, the matter had been settled. It was easy for the officials to pile up words to praise the imperial noble consort. They all came from the imperial examinations. Who didn't know how to flatter? Xiao Yuanzhao was very happy. He looked even happier than when he was discussing the matter of the prince regent. He immediately ordered the imperial supervisor to choose an auspicious day, and ordered the Ministry of Rites to prepare for the empress conferment ceremony. He also ordered Minister Chu to be conferred the title of Duke Qinzhen, who was still the Minister of Revenue. He made Chu Zhe the general of the Imperial Guards, who was in charge of all the troops in the capital. The Chu family jumped 3 levels in a short 2 months, and became the most powerful family in the dynasty. Some people whispered that the emperor had always disliked foreign relatives monopolizing power. They didn't know why he trusted the Chu family so much. How could they know that the emperor's trust came from mind reading? Xiao Yuanzhao didn't often use mind reading. He had studied the emperor's mind reading since childhood, which was enough. But occasionally, he could rely on mind reading to determine loyalty and betrayal to give the emperor's trust. The father and son of the Chu family had always been loyal to him. With the relationship with Chu Xiang, he naturally didn't care about foreign relatives. As long as they were loyal, he dared to give them power. Chu Xiang had seen everything that had happened in court through the heaven and earth mirror. She naturally understood that Xiao Yuanzhao had made some concessions that belonged to the emperor for her, put away some of the suspicions that belonged to the emperor, and placed too much trust in her and the Chu family. Rao's feelings were not static, especially after reaching the emperor's height. There were too many factors that could affect feelings. She felt that since the two of them were very comfortable together, then they should continue like this. There should not be anything to disturb them and test the emperor's feelings for her. She mulled over it for a while. When Xiao Yuanzhao returned to the palace with a smile, he saw her flustered appearance. His smile immediately disappeared, and he hurriedly went forward to hug her. What happened to you? What happened? His sharp gaze looked towards the palace servants. The palace servants in the room immediately knelt down and begged for forgiveness in panic. Your Majesty, after Nyang woke up and ate breakfast, she was fine. Afterwards, she suddenly became like this. This servant and the others really don't know what happened. Xiao Yuanzhao carefully listened to what Chu Xiang was thinking, and was shocked to find out that Chu Xiang had lost her ability. How can this be? Why did it become like this? Why did it suddenly disappear? Chu Xiang took a deep breath and forced out a smile towards Xiao Yuanzhao. She shook her head and said, I'm fine, I'm just not feeling too well. Xiao Yuanzhao opened his mouth, feeling a bit panicked inside. It wasn't because he was afraid of the ability disappearing, but because he was afraid of the unknown. Today the ability had suddenly appeared or disappeared. Would there be more uncontrollable strange things in the future? If too many strange things happened while he was on the throne, wouldn't that mean he wasn't fit to be the emperor? But seeing Chu Xiang's sad appearance, Xiao Yuanzhao temporarily threw this to the back of his mind. He picked her up by the waist and gently placed her on the bed. Xiao Yuanzhao covered Chu Xiang with a thin blanket and hugged her from the side. He comforted her. If you're not feeling well, rest well. I'll have the imperial kitchen make your favorite dishes. He held Chu Xiang's hand and thought for a while before saying, Is it because you're about to become the empress that you're uneasy? Don't be afraid, no matter what, I'll be with you. You don't like me having other women, so I'll send them all away. I won't want anyone else in the future, and will only be good to you. He felt that the best comfort for Chu Xiang right now was to give her a promise that she wanted the most. As expected, once he finished, Chu Xiang turned her head to look at him in shock. She said in disbelief, You're serious? You won't touch other women in this life? You've thought it through? This was something that Chu Xiang did not expect. She thought that it would take a while to win the emperor's heart, but she did not think that the emperor would make a promise himself. But this did not affect her acting. Just like the emperor thought, her eyes revealed surprise and suspicion. Xiao Yuanzhao pressed his forehead against hers and chuckled. The words of an emperor carry enormous weight. My promise to you today will never change. All right, I believe you. If you go back on your words, I won't let you go. Chu Xiang looked at him and slowly revealed a faint smile. She thought in her heart, maybe you'll lose what you gain. The ability that she got in exchange for blocking a blade for the emperor disappeared without a trace after consummating with the emperor. It was as if it was just to help them be a pair of lovers. Then she chose to believe the emperor. If the emperor betrayed her one day, then she had the ability to deal with him. Xiao Yuanzhao finally remembered that Chu Xiang did not only have abilities. She also had inexplicable skills and a clever mind. She even knew how to make miraculous drugs. She had the ability to drug the regent in the palace, making it so that other than him, no one in the world would know that it was her doing. Chu Xiang was very strong. How could she need him to comfort her like this? Wasn't she still thinking about how to deal with him in the future? But the joy of being in love with each other was greater than anything else. He touched Chu Xiang's hair, and suddenly felt a wave of peace. Between them, even the last ability that he might be wary of in the future had been removed. What reason did he have not to be good to her? He doted on her, used the Chu family, and felt the same peace of mind. They were already existences that he could entrust his back to. For an emperor, this was a very rare thing, and he cherished it very much. Xiao Yuanzhao thought that Chu Xiang's ability was gone, so his ability would also disappear soon. But after half a month, he found that his ability was still there, and it was not affected at all. He suddenly had a ridiculous idea. He actually thought that his and Chu Xiang's abilities were bestowed by the emperor to bring them together. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? In half a month, he uprooted all of the regent's power. The regent died of illness in prison. Imperial concubine Shi and her palace mates were given poison wine, and the Qi family was punished. The entire capital was filled with blood. Whether it was the officials or the people, they were all very cautious, afraid that they would get burned. But Xiao Yuanzhao was a wise ruler. He had already investigated the regent's background, so he did not harm the innocent. This fight for imperial power was perhaps the one with the least casualties in history, and Chu Xiong secretly helped a lot. When Xiao Yuanzhao was free after finishing his work, he took Chu Xiong out of the palace to play. The two of them were dressed casually like newlyweds shopping. When they saw something interesting, they would stop and look. Xiao Yuanzhao also picked an exquisite hairpin for Chu Xiong, and personally put it in her hair in the store. Chu Xiong looked up and smiled at him. "Husband, does it look good?" "Anything madam wears looks good." Xiao Yuanzhao liked to hear her softly call him husband. Every time it happened, he would grant her every request. And he understood her feelings, so he naturally knew when and what to say to make her happy. These days, they were practically glued to each other. Even if they only exchanged glances, outsiders could feel the deep affection between them. "This older sister is really beautiful. This hairpin suits older sister very well. Today's meeting is fate. Why don't I give this hairpin to older sister? I hope older sister will kindly accept it." A mellow and pleasant voice was heard. Xiao Yuanzhao and Chu Xiong looked over at the same time, and saw a fair and beautiful woman with an excellent figure walking over with a smile. Her eyes were very serious, and did not look at Xiao Yuanzhao at all, as if she was really just admiring Chu Xiong's beauty. But her appearance was actually comparable to Chu Xiong's. This was strange. After Chu Xiong cultivated, her skin was as white as snow, and her skin was as white as jade. Every part of her body had been baptized by spiritual energy, and was not comparable to ordinary people. And this woman was not inferior to her at all. Even if she was just drawing spiritual energy into her body, and had not cultivated to the first level of qi refining, she was not inferior to ordinary women. Chu Xiong was a bit curious about her, so she signaled the servants not to stop her. She allowed the woman to walk in front of her, and asked, "This older sister looks a bit unfamiliar. May I know which family you are from?" The woman smiled generously and said, "Older sister, I am the granddaughter of Grand Tutor Chen's eldest branch. When I was young, I was sent to my maternal family in Jiangnan. Because of my weak body, I only returned to the capital a month ago, so older sister does not recognize me. This shop is opened by me, and older sister and I feel like old friends at first sight. Seeing older sister, I feel happy. Older sister, are you willing to come upstairs with me?" Xiao Yuanzhao glanced at her. He did not expect her to have such good taste. Wasn't the Imperial Gui Fei someone that everyone liked when they saw her? However, Chu Xiong smelled a strong scent of white lotus and green tea, and said with interest, "Sure, I also want to see other hair accessories. Please." The woman led the way in front, walking up the stairs. Chu Xiong and Xiao Yuanzhao walked behind her hand in hand. Who knew that the woman would suddenly step on air, and her entire body would fall towards Chu Xiong. Chu Xiong could dodge, but she did not. Instead, she thought to herself, "Here she comes, I knew this woman was strange." Xiao Yuanzhao did not have time to think about her intentions. He was afraid that she would fall, so he quickly grabbed her and raised his hand to block the woman. The woman fell onto Chu Xiong's body, so naturally, she fell onto Xiao Yuanzhao's arm. "Sorry, I was impolite." The woman wanted to stand up in a panic, but she was dizzy. She stumbled and fell again, unconsciously grabbing Xiao Yuanzhao's wrist. Xiao Yuanzhao wanted to shake her off, but he heard her cheer in her heart. "System. How is it? Did the emperor notice me?" Xiao Yuanzhao paused and naturally helped the woman stand up. He then heard the woman's depressed thoughts. "How can his affection for me be zero? Can't he see how beautiful I am? The Imperial Gui Fei's affection for me is -20? I clearly performed very well. Even if he doesn't like me, it shouldn't be negative, right? That's right, this Imperial Gui Fei is so beautiful, and the emperor only favors her. Could it be that she came from the modern era like me?" The word modern era successfully attracted Xiao Yuanzhao's attention. He remembered that Chu Xiong's thoughts once mentioned that the ancient era was not as interesting as the modern era. What did this woman mean? Where was the modern era? What did she mean that she and the Imperial Gui Fei came from the modern era? The Imperial Gui Fei had skills and brains that were different from the past. Was this the secret? Chapter 352. When Xiao Yuanzhao returned to the palace, he ordered people to investigate the background of Grand Tutor Chen's eldest granddaughter. He found that this woman was indeed very strange. The woman's name was Chen Wanqing. When her birth mother was dying, she was afraid that her stepmother would neglect her, so she was sent to her maternal grandfather's house to be raised. She had been weak and sickly for many years, but suddenly recovered half a year ago. It was like an immortal had entered her dreams. Her birth mother prayed for her in the underworld, and she would have great fortune in the future. She insisted on going to the capital, so her maternal grandfather's house had no choice but to send her back. After that, she won the favor of her grandfather and grandmother. She outsmarted her stepmother and cousin, and showed amazing talent at a gathering in the capital. Because of her intelligence, her family allowed her to open a shop and manage it herself. The jewelry she designed was original and quickly became famous. It was said that she was preparing to open some beauty salon recently, a place to help madams and sisters become beautiful. With her good skin as an example, many women had already booked the opening package in advance. According to the secret guard's investigation, she had told her grandmother in private that she wanted to enter the palace and become the empress. If she could only be in a low position when she entered the palace, she would definitely be able to climb to the position of empress in the future. She hoped that Grand Tutor Chen could help her get a higher position for her. Xiao Yuanzhao was very unfamiliar with terms like beauty salon and opening package, so he became more and more curious about the so-called modern era. Chen Wanqing had secretly killed the servant girl who offended her. She knew that Chu Xiang was about to be conferred the empress, but she still wanted the position of empress. She had already touched his reverse scale. He was not polite at all and directly summoned Grand Tutor Chen to the palace, ordering him to explain why Chen Wanqing was so different. If he could not explain it clearly, then who knew if Chen Wanqing was a spy sent by the enemy? When Grand Tutor Chen heard this, he broke out in cold sweat and hurriedly knelt to beg for forgiveness. That day, he heard that his granddaughter had met the emperor on her way home. The emperor had a good impression of her and even believed it, thinking that his family could really have a favorite concubine. Now it seemed that the emperor had a good impression of her. He clearly wanted his granddaughter's life. He could explain that Chen Wanqing had grown up and became beautiful because her body had recovered, but he could not explain the things that Chen Wanqing had made. The mask and glass mirror prepared by the beauty salon could not be hidden. This was not something that a woman could casually make without any research. Chen Wanqing's maternal family, and even the place where her maternal family lived, did not have these. How did Chen Wanqing know them? The more Grand Tutor Chen explained, the more shocked he became. It wasn't that he hadn't been suspicious in the past, but Chen Wanqing had profited greatly, and her fame would only be good for the Chen family. If she could become a favored concubine, it would bring great wealth to the Chen family. There was no harm in that. Therefore, he had never pursued these details. Now that he was being questioned by the emperor, there was only one word left in his heart. Finished. Xiao Yuanzhao kept looking at him with a cold face. When he did not speak, he said lightly, "This girl is not the Chen family's biological daughter. She is a spy in disguise. Immediately send her to the palace, and someone will interrogate her." Grand Tutor Chen was taken aback. He didn't dare to say anything and left to escort Chen Wanqing into the palace as fast as he could. Chen Wanqing was pleasantly surprised, thinking that the emperor had fallen in love with her at first sight and couldn't wait to see her. Along the way, she complained to the system that she hadn't changed into her best clothes. As a result, once she entered the palace, before she could take a good look at what the palace looked like, she was suddenly taken into a secret room by a few secret guards who suddenly appeared. Xiao Yuanzhao did not appear at all. It was still very easy for his subordinates to get someone to speak the truth. Otherwise, if he had to use mind reading for something like an interrogation, then he wouldn't be the emperor anymore. He thought that this girl was malicious and had ill intentions towards him and Chu Xiang. She had even hinted vaguely that she would be the birth mother of the next emperor. Xiao Yuanzhao was very disgusted. After he caught her, he did not pay any more attention to her, and did not mention it to Chu Xiang. The regent had fallen. He held the imperial power in his hands. Now the most important thing to do was to benefit the country and the people. His subordinates and subjects would willingly submit to him, and other things would have to be put behind. Chu Xiang let the heaven and earth mirror monitor Chen Wanqing to see if there was anything unusual about her. Before long, Chen Wanqing was locked up. She was a little surprised. She had thought that Xiao Yuanzhao could hear Chen Wanqing's thoughts. Chen Wanqing was so beautiful and behaved so well. Perhaps Xiao Yuanzhao would find out about her abnormality and take her into the palace, then find an excuse not to touch her. She did not expect Xiao Yuanzhao to be so cold and heartless towards people with abnormalities. She was interested to see how the secret guards interrogated Chen Wanqing. She found that the secret guards did not hurt Chen Wanqing. Instead, they used feathers to torture the soles of her feet, making her itchy and unbearable. They tied her to a rotating wooden stake and spun her crazily, making her dizzy and vomiting. There were many other ways to torture her like this. At first, Chen Wanqing was very stubborn, and her eyes were vicious. She even unknowingly broke the rope that tied her up again, and spilled powder to knock down a secret guard. Unfortunately, the secret guards were very strict. Chen Wanqing did not know where they were hiding. In the blink of an eye, she was caught again. Then they tortured her without sleep and rest, studying where her powder came from, and where the sharp weapon to cut the rope came from. After repeating this a few times, Chen Wanqing could not hold on any longer. Mentally, she gave in and finally realized the terror of imperial power. This was not a game. This was a real ancient imperial family. The emperor was not an NPC that she could attack at will. She exposed her abnormality, and this was the result she got. She regretted going up to talk to the emperor when she met him by chance. But after thinking about it, the emperor was so suspicious. Even if she never met him, she would still give herself away when she entered the palace in the future. She did not hide her ability much in Jiangnan. Now it was useless to make up for it. Chen Wanqing explained everything, including her identity in the modern world, how she was bound to the system, what the system could do, how she looked like in the modern world, and her guess that Chu Xiang was a time traveler. Xiao Yuanzhao gave the secret guards a gag order, ordering them to not reveal their guess that Chu Xiang was a time traveler at any time and under any circumstances. Then he carefully compared and felt that Chu Xiang's change was not obvious. Because he could hear Chu Xiang's thoughts, he felt that Chu Xiang was different from before. Just from the surface, Chu Xiang had always been like that. Also, Chu Xiang was very familiar with everything in the ancient world. The clothes and jewelry she opened did not have any strange things that were out of this era. Even the accounting method was not Chen Wanqing's Arabic numerals. Everything about Chu Xiang could be traced. Now that she was so open and cheerful, it was very likely that it was because she was in love with him. She no longer wanted to be low-key and pretend to be invisible, and then secretly left the palace. Although Chu Xiang's skills and ability to make medicine could not be explained, Xiao Yuanzhao felt that she was definitely different from Chen Wanqing. After Chen Wanqing revealed everything, Xiao Yuanzhao arranged for her to stay in a remote courtyard and ordered the secret guards to guard it, not allowing her to take a step out of the courtyard. Then he made good use of her system and recorded her description of the modern world day by day, ordering people to organize the information that was beneficial to the current dynasty. Chu Xiang saw that Xiao Yuanzhao had done everything he could, so she did not care about Chen Wanqing anymore. She wanted to do some things, but she did not want to bring too many modern things over. Ever since she decided to stay and be the empress, she began to read the history books of this world to understand the situation of the people of the current dynasty. Now, she had already determined the most helpful thing for the current dynasty, and that was to develop agriculture. The people needed food, especially in this dynasty where people could starve to death. Increasing the production of food was the most important thing. With food as the foundation, many other things would have room for development. Therefore, Chu Xiang acted as if she was on a whim. After destroying the medicine in the storehouse, she had people open up a plot of land to plant medicine. Then, because the palace servants and gardeners did not know much about planting medicine, she lost interest and pulled out the medicine to plant food. Xiao Yuanzhao could hear her thoughts and found that she was just bored and interested in this, so he let her be. He even specially picked a very large garden for her, and found a woman who was good at farming to come into the palace to plant with her, treating it as playing with her. The three Fae did not know what to do with this change. They could already tell when Shi Fei's accident happened that the emperor really liked the imperial Gui Fei. They could not compare to her no matter what. They wanted to fight for favor, but they could not even see the emperor's face. They wanted to harm Chu Xiang, but Chu Xiang often stayed in the emperor's bedroom and was surrounded by the emperor's people. They could not even touch a single strand of her hair. They were still on guard that Chu Xiang would cause trouble for them. Who knew that Chu Xiang seemed to have forgotten about them and actually started to plant for fun? The jealousy and schemes in their hearts faded day by day. All that was left was unwillingness. They were not yet 20 years old and were still good girls. How could they be willing to wait for death in the palace alone? The emperor did not favor them. Even if they were willing to stay in the palace and find something to do to relieve their boredom, no one cared. Therefore, when Xiao Yuanzhao finally summoned them and asked if they were willing to leave the palace and marry someone else, they only thought about it for a night before agreeing. They had no choice but to agree. Xiao Yuanzhao already knew that he would not see them for the rest of his life. Even if they did not believe that Xiao Yuanzhao would like Chu Xiang for the rest of his life, Xiao Yuanzhao's change of heart would not affect them in the future. They definitely would not have good days if they stayed. Therefore they all left. Chu Xiang was busy planting in the fields. She only found out about this when Xiao Yuanzhao said he wanted to give her a surprise. Chu Xiang saw the bright smile in his eyes and couldn't help but smile with him. She said to him, "I also have a surprise for you. You will know what it is soon. You will definitely like it." Xiao Yuanzhao was slightly proud. He used his mind reading to know many of Chu Xiang's thoughts. Everything he did could make Chu Xiang happy. Sometimes he thought that they might be the most loving emperor and empress in history. Their deeds might be passed down for thousands of years. However, when future generations studied them, they would definitely find many inconsistencies that could not be explained, because no one would know that he could read minds. His empress could poison the regent without anyone noticing. Maybe when future generations mentioned some of their experiences, they would feel that they were very lucky and were people who were favored by the emperor. The coronation ceremony came as scheduled. It was unusually grand. All the people in the capital were celebrating for them. Chu Xiang became the legitimate mother of the country. Many officials looked at the flourishing Chu family and were very envious. The emperor had appointed an empress and overthrown the regent. Next, he would choose concubines and fill up the harem, right? They presented a memorial together in the imperial court to ask about the selection of concubines. Who knew that Xiao Yuanzhao had Liang Zhong read the imperial edict that had been written long ago? He declared that there would be no concubines while he was on the throne. The 3 concubines in the palace would also return home and marry. From then on, there would be no harem. When these words came out, it instantly caused a huge uproar. Chapter 353. The emperor wanted to abandon the imperial harem and leave only the empress. Naturally, the courtiers would not allow it. Even the newly appointed Duke Chu and General Chu were shocked. They were not overjoyed but worried. None of the past emperors only favored one woman. Now Xiao Yuanzhao only loved Chu Xiang and was willing to do such an outrageous thing for her. Naturally, they believed that this was true. But what about 1 year later, 5 years later, 10 years later? Beauty would age easily. It was easy to wear out all the passion for one person for a long time. At that time, Xiao Yuanzhao would regret it. He only needed to restart the consort selection to restore the imperial harem. But what would Chu Xiang do then? She would become the joke of the whole world, the most famous jealous empress, the most hated existence of the emperor, and the target of the next favorite concubine. Only by bullying her again and again could the next favorite concubine prove that she was really favored, better than the empress who used to only favor the imperial harem. Duke Chu was worried. When he returned home, he asked Madame Chu to go to the imperial harem to talk about the interests of Chu Xiang. It was not easy to be favored alone. Duke Chu was a man himself. How could he not understand the mentality of men? He asked Madame Chu to make it clear to Chu Xiang that it was impossible to expect a man to be infatuated with a woman for a lifetime. Madame Chu asked Chu Xiang to dismiss the servants and tried her best to persuade her. She hoped that she would give up the idea of monopolizing the emperor. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. She also took out several well-known favorite concubines in history as examples, worrying that Chu Xiang would follow in their footsteps. There was once an empress and the emperor who were childhood sweethearts. But later, she only got the emperor's respect out of nostalgia. His favor had long been gone. Chu Xiang listened patiently. She knew that they were all concerned about her, so she was not displeased. It was just that these worldly concerns were the least important to a powerful person, because there was a solution to all of his worries. It was impossible for two people to maintain their passion for love for decades, but if they didn't want it to change, it was very simple. They just had to find something interesting to do every few years to maintain the freshness of their relationship. As for whether or not Xiao Yuanzhao, an emperor, would treat her well for the rest of his life, of course he would. It was not about something as intangible as love. Her value alone was something that countless concubines, princes, and courtiers could not compare to. If the emperor saw her value, how could he abandon her for those things? Although this way of thinking was utilitarian, it was very realistic and indestructible. Moreover, Xiao Yuanzhao was indeed sincere to her. With all these, he would not have a change of heart. She did not like to test people's nature and whether or not a man's feelings would change. Therefore, after confirming that Xiao Yuanzhao was sincere, she had already eliminated all the factors that might affect their relationship in the future. As the saying goes, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Not a single one of those things would happen. Of course, she could not tell Mrs. Chu about this, so she only acted like she trusted Xiao Yuanzhao very much, comforting her mother happily, and then denied her mother's advice. The members of the Chu family were helpless. After thinking about it, they could only work for Xiao Yuanzhao diligently, and try their best to develop their power without provoking Xiao Yuanzhao. This way, even if Chu Xiang fell out of favor in the future, she still had her family to rely on. Xiao Yuanzhao and the other concubines would not be too harsh on Chu Xiang, because of the power of the Chu family. The Chu family worried a lot about Chu Xiang. Chu Xiang accepted this kindness and sent large amounts of rewards to the Chu family, causing others to be envious, especially the families of the three concubines. They all secretly hated that the favored one was not their own daughter. But no matter what the courtiers thought, they could not stop Xiao Yuanzhao's decision. The imperial edict was quickly announced. All the people knew that the dynasty had cancelled the draft. Some muttered that the empress was a jealous woman, and some envied the love between the emperor and empress. In any case, Xiao Yuanzhao was strong. No one could do anything. This matter passed like this. The three concubines were sent home. Chu Xiang gave them rich rewards, and allowed them to decide on their own marriage. If they were not willing, no one could force them to marry. This guaranteed their future lives to the greatest extent. It was also compensation to them. Chu Xiang no longer lived in Taihe Palace, and moved directly into Xiao Yuanzhao's bedroom. In the morning, Xiao Yuanzhao went to attend court. Chu Xiang went to the specially opened farm to tend the crops. In the afternoon, Xiao Yuanzhao reviewed memorials. Chu Xiang sometimes read and accompanied him in the imperial study. Sometimes she called for opera, books, and dancing to relieve her boredom. When Xiao Yuanzhao was free, the two would admire the flowers and the moon, play zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, go incognito, and find all kinds of fun things to do. Their daily lives were interesting. Of course, the courtiers did not give up on persuading her to start the draft. However, they were smart enough to not be direct. Instead, they used all kinds of things to test her again and again. The result of each test was disappointment. Of course, they were not convinced. After all, they did not know what Chu Xiang had done. On the surface, she was just a beautiful woman who had gained the emperor's favor. There was nothing special about her. They could not understand why the entire harem would be abandoned like this. Spring passed and autumn came. Chu Xiang's crops had a great harvest. She held Xiao Yuanzhao's hand and led him to stand on the high platform. Looking out, the crops were heavy with grain. The plants were bent from the weight. It was a patch of golden yellow. It was very dazzling. She waved her hand and ordered Ziyu to report the data. The production of crops in this dynasty was average. If Chu Xiang's plot of land was converted to the same area of land in the imperial farm, the production had increased by 10 times. Xiao Yuanzhao's expression that was originally playing with Chu Xiang turned to shock. He looked at Chu Xiang in disbelief, and then looked at the paddy field. 10 times? Is this true? Chu Xiang said with a smile. Of course it's true. Seeing is believing. I'm going to give you a big surprise. Is this surprise big? Chu Xiang thought that with the experience this time, the production could be even more next time. Not just paddy, there could be more of other crops and fruits. Xiao Yuanzhao heard her thoughts and was pleasantly surprised as if he had seen fireworks. Chu Xiang had wanted to give him a gift at the wedding. Now he felt that this was the best gift. With 10 times the production, his people would have enough food and clothing. They would not starve to death so easily. He did not care about the palace people around and hugged Chu Xiang tightly. His voice was filled with excitement. Xiang, you really are an inexhaustible treasure. How did you do it? This surprise is really too big. I like it very much and am very grateful. The subjects will all thank you. Chu Xiang looked up at him from his embrace. I just happened to be enlightened in this area and discovered more than others. This way, no one will object to me dominating the emperor, right? Xiao Yuanzhao laughed loudly. You're so sincere. You didn't reveal anything and didn't let me announce your contribution. So this is what you were waiting for? With this great contribution, how many people will be slapped in the face? All right, what do you want to do? Of course it's to summon them into the palace to see with their own eyes, so that they won't be so narrow-minded in the future. If they have the time, they should work hard for the country. Where would they find the energy to manage the emperor's harem? You're such a smart emperor. Would you favor a beautiful woman for no reason? They suspect that you've been charmed by beauty. I think they're the ones who are stupid. All right, we'll do as you say. Xiao Yuanzhao summoned all the civil and military officials into the palace, and ordered the officials in charge of farming to explain to everyone how amazing the results of this farm were. When the courtiers heard that this was planted by Chu Xiang, their gazes towards her were filled with shock. Some people suspected that the emperor was purposely creating momentum for Chu Xiang. But immediately after, Chu Xiang personally walked into the farm and spoke loudly about the things to pay attention to for each improvement in farming. Their thoughts were dispelled. This wasn't creating momentum. This was really a great blessing that Chu Xiang had brought to the people. Someone secretly asked Chu Zhe, the empress knows how to farm? How did a family like yours allow the empress to come into contact with farming? Chu Zhe was still looking at the rice paddies in shock. He reflexively said, she didn't like to go out in the past. She liked to take care of the flowers and plants in her yard. But I thought that she only liked flowers and plants. I didn't think that she also grew crops. At this point, Chu Zhe started to feel guilty. I'm too bad as an older brother. In the past, I neglected the empress and didn't even pay attention to her likes and dislikes. It was the emperor's kindness that opened up this farm for the empress, and allowed the empress to use her strengths. The courtiers nodded in understanding. They thought that when they went back, they had to ask the foreign what the girls in the family liked. They shouldn't restrict them and let them think about it more. Maybe they would be able to figure out something extraordinary. When the courtiers confirmed that this high-yield crop could be spread to various areas, they excitedly knelt on the ground and shouted, "Long live the emperor! Long live the empress!" The famine disaster was solved in their dynasty. These people also had more opportunities to be immortalized. In the future, when the future generations mention this dynasty, they would definitely praise this prosperous era. As officials of this dynasty, they felt honored and accepted the empress of the Curtain dynasty from the bottom of their hearts. Chen Wanqing was under house arrest in a corner of the palace. She couldn't go out, but she could get news of the outside world. When she heard that Chu Xiang increased the grain production by 10 times, she was completely stunned. She wasn't sure if Chu Xiang was a transmigrator, because there were many capable people in the ancient times. It wasn't impossible for them to do this. But if Chu Xiang was really a transmigrator, then her scope was much bigger than hers. The mirrors, skincare products, and jewelry that she took out were all for the sake of earning money from the other woman. They even carried some of the superior fortune of a transmigrated woman. However, Chu Xiang's actions were for the sake of benefiting others. Just this point alone, she understood why Xiao Yuanzhao did not care about her. She was very beautiful and had many tricks, but Xiao Yuanzhao already had someone better than her in his heart, so he naturally didn't care about her. Her system needed her to do missions to buy things. She was trapped here and couldn't do missions. In order to escape, she had already spent all her points to buy the dagger, medicine powder, and space. Now that she couldn't get the system's help, she could only desperately think of everything in the modern era to prove that she was still valuable. Her heart was filled with panic. She suddenly understood why Xiao Yuanzhao never came to see her. It was because Chu Xiang's value was much higher than hers. Although the knowledge she took out was novel, it wasn't enough for the emperor of a country to pay attention to. She had been urged by the system countless times to think of a way, but after knowing that Chu Xiang was so outstanding, she was disheartened. She didn't know how long she could live in this world. Maybe the final result would be her and the system dying together. She regretted it. If she knew this would happen, she would have kept a low profile and wouldn't be arrogant just because she transmigrated and the system. But it was useless to regret. She could only continue to be trapped. She thought that at least her food and clothes were good. Other than the lack of fun, she wouldn't be tortured to extort a confession. She was right. No matter how curious Xiao Yuanzhao was about the modern era, he wouldn't pay much attention to her. She was just a normal person in the modern era. The things she described in the modern era couldn't be realized. To Xiao Yuanzhao, it was like a castle in the air made up by a dreamer. It didn't have much value. However, Xiao Yuanzhao did not do anything to her. Seeing that she had told him everything she knew, he gave her countless books and toys to help her pass the time. She didn't suffer much in the palace. After she slowly stopped being afraid, she relaxed and accepted her fate. She lived until she was over 80 years old and died of old age. Xiao Yuanzhao had created the strongest prosperous era in the past few hundred years. With Chu Xiang's help, the agriculture industry was extremely developed, and it also promoted the development of many other industries. The country was truly peaceful, and the people were well fed. He even reduced taxes for 3 years in a row, becoming the emperor who paid the least taxes during his reign. Chu Xiang opened a girls' school and allowed girls to study. She also gathered merchants to promote charitable donations and opened schools in various poor areas. Not only did she teach the 4 books and 5 classics, she also taught craftsmen. She cultivated countless talents and raised the status of merchants. The emperor and empress contributions made the people submit. All the people were grateful when they mentioned them. The only regret was that they didn't have any children. There was once a court official who used this as a reason to ask Xiao Yuanzhao to take in a concubine. Xiao Yuanzhao rejected it on the spot. Many people praised him for his infatuation with the empress and regretted that he didn't have an heir. They had some complaints about Chu Xiang. No matter where Xiao Yuanzhao was, he would punish the person who said this and protect Chu Xiang to the end. This matter was like drinking water. Only the person who drank it would know whether it was hot or cold. Even though every emperor hoped to pass the throne to his son, in reality, which emperor and his son had a warm and pure relationship? There were countless cases of a father killing his son and a son killing his father. The so-called inheritance was just for the bloodline. In reality, when one reached his height, he really didn't care about the bloodline. He knew from Chen Wanqing that no dynasty could last forever. After reaching the pinnacle of prosperity, there was bound to be a decline. He had already created an unprecedented golden age, and was worthy of his ancestors and the people. He could not care less about the change of dynasties in the future, and he did not care if the future emperor had his blood flowing in his body. Just like the modern era that Chen Wanqing mentioned, every modern emperor didn't pass down their bloodline but relied on their abilities. Only then could they ensure the safety of the country. He picked the smartest child from his brother's grandchildren and taught him for many years. He was then conferred the title of imperial grandson. Because the imperial grandson wasn't directly related to him, he didn't have the sense of superiority that he was born with. He was cautious in his words and actions, and was very filial to him and Chu Xiang. He studied every knowledge that they taught him seriously. When he grew up, he was unexpectedly outstanding and had the style that he had in the past. He was extremely satisfied. The courtiers never bothered him because of the issue of heirs. His feelings for Chu Xiang had never changed. First, it was because he loved Chu Xiang. Second, it was because what Chu Xiang had brought to him and his subordinates was something that no number of heirs could compare to. He had Chu Xiang as his companion, and devoted his life to promoting the prosperous era, benefiting the people and conquering the border territories. When he was old, he still felt that he didn't have enough time, and wanted to live for another 500 years. He had never wasted his time. The things that he obtained were things that no one could envy. He had no regrets at all. On the contrary, he was somewhat glad that he met a person like Chen Wanqing, who made him feel relieved about the future. He only needed to take care of the country in front of him, and make it beautiful. When he was about to die, he sent away the imperial grandson and everyone around him, leaving only Chu Xiang by his side. He held Chu Xiang's hand and said weakly, "Xiang, I'm satisfied to be able to hold your hand in this life. It's a pity that I don't know if I'll be able to see you again in the next life." Chu Xiang sat by the bed and gently tidied up the hair on his temples. She said softly, "I've never regretted staying in the palace for you in this life." Xiao Yuanzhao smiled weakly and slowly closed his eyes. Just as he was about to die, he suddenly heard a strange voice. "Xiao Yuanzhao, are you willing to bind the system? After binding, the system can take you through the space-time barrier to live in other worlds." Xiao Yuanzhao immediately thought of Chen Wanqing. "You're Chen Wanqing's system?" Chen Wanqing is already dead, and is an unqualified host. The system has already removed the binding. You have strong willpower and meticulous thinking, so you're the most suitable host. Are you willing to accept the binding? Xiao Yuanzhao did not answer directly, but asked another question. "Why don't you bind Xiang? She can't be bound, and I can't find out anything about her. Maybe she's a special transmigrator." Xiao Yuanzhao was not surprised. They had lived together for a lifetime, so he could more or less sense Chu Xiang's uniqueness. He knew that the system had never hurt Chen Wanqing, so he agreed after thinking for a while. After that, he felt the heaviness and discomfort of dying disappear. The moment he left his body, he saw Chu Xiang put their concentric knot in his hand. He took one last look at Chu Xiang before the system took him to another world. Since Chu Xiang could be a special transmigrator, they might have a chance to meet again in the future. Chu Xiang looked around in confusion. "Jing was there an energy fluctuation just now?" "Yes, it disappeared in less than a second." Chu Xiang felt that it might be Xiao Yuanzhao's soul after he died. The soul had to be reincarnated, so it naturally could not stay. No matter what, Xiao Yuanzhao was no longer around, so she had to leave this world too. The heaven and earth mirror suggested, "Master, do you want to transmigrate into a special existence in your next life?" "What special existence?" "System. Master can choose one person to act as her system, and help her reverse her life. It might be a novel experience." System? Chu Xiang laughed. "Sounds interesting. I've seen the mind-reading ability in this life, so I'll be someone's cheat in the next life. There are so many good things in the space, so I'm not afraid that there won't be anything for people to exchange. When the time comes, we'll give her a mission, and when she completes it, we'll give her points and let her exchange them to help her fulfill her wish." Chu Xianglai was interested, and immediately let the heaven and earth mirror take her to an unknown new world. She already had the same lifespan, so she still had a long future ahead of her. She had to find something new and interesting to do, and pretending to be a system was a very interesting thing. In the future, they would find more interesting things to try one by one, and experience endless fun. The world was so big, so there would be things that she had not seen before, waiting for her to encounter. She was looking forward to the unknown and new journey. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.